Trade war panic continues. World leaders suggest de-dollarization. FYI, your estimated max is 550 pounds based on that working set. Even for a big boy, that's great for how aesthetic you are. I don't know. I think I should be doing much higher weight. World leaders suggest de-dollarization. Thoughts on anti-reactionary elements of modern day unions like Teamsters Mobilize? Would you be willing to talk to them? Sure. Important update. Yesterday I told you 75% of those deported to CCOT have no criminal record or allegations. Is actually more than 90%. Oh wow. Things get worse and worse. That's crazy. Okay. Trade war panic continues. World leaders suggest de-dollarization. This is the one thing that the Trump administration wanted to do the exact opposite of. So it's cool that they are failing in such spectacular fashion that it's actually undermining the confidence that people have in the dollar, leading people away from the dollar, which is, you know, probably that is the real nuke. That is worse than nuking the United States of America. Nuking the financial system to move away from the dollar being seen as the reserve currency is unironically worse than actually dumping nukes on every fucking major city in the United States of America, like straight up. So that's interesting. That's something interesting to think about. But Trump is also screaming, why won't she call me? That's what he's been saying, which is cool. It's really interesting to think of. I just keep trying to tell. Look, I talk to a lot of subject matter experts on a daily freaking basis, okay? And it's always interesting because their perspective on this stuff instructs me, informs me, but it also instructs me into fully realizing that having a very different attitude or very different understanding of how China operates, unironically in this circumstance, helps. Their lived experience and their social conditioning against China and their dogmatic ways of thinking about global capitalism stunts their predictive capabilities, if that makes sense. It stunts people's predictive capabilities. Mark Lamont Hill shit talked everyone else after being the only person on Joe Budden to be able to bench press 225 pounds. I know Mark is the GOAT, man. I texted him. I think he has a new number though, because I texted his old number and it didn't. It went green and it used to be blue. But I want to have him back on the stream. I gotta hit him up. Joe Budden. I love Mark. He's so dope. Just got back from benching 3.5, 225 for the first time. Hell yeah, chatter. Congratulations. That's actually very, very good. You're powerful. You're a powerful guy. Yeah, we're gonna talk about like the idiotic nuke China memes that Westoid disgusting Angloid piglets who bay for blood at every corner have been fantasizing about, because they have only one speed, and that is genocide. Nuclear genocide. Thermonuclear genocide. That's all they got. Trade war panic continues. World leaders suggest de-dollarization. Why won't she call me? SCOTUS sets red line on deportations. Demands return of Maryland man back to U.S. Joe Rogan, Israel free speech debate eats up. Get in now. Gooner Gang needs you to play the new Marvel season because goddamn, bro, that's the same as the old Marvel season. What are you talking about? Every Marvel season has goon material. They're not bringing it back. No, I know. When are you gonna hit the most Turkish city in America? Nashville, my goat. Is Nashville the most Turkish city in America? That's crazy. I don't know about that. Also, Kneecap is out here in the United States of America, U.S. soil right now. I'm looking into having some fun with the boys. Might get him some Turkish food. If you guys have any suggestions on what we could do in Los Angeles as well when they're out here, that'd be pretty sick. Yeah. So just remember that. That's something I'm trying to do. Something I'm trying to set up with the friggin' boys. All right. Chucky Allah. Did I say that right? I don't know. But hopefully they can teach me some statements, some things to say every now and then, you know? Because can you get some stout in LA? I don't want to actually I don't want to actually take him to like an Irish pub because I feel like that's boring. I feel like they do that all the time. I want to do cultural exchange stuff. Did make Xi yellow in this poster. I don't think they meant anything by that. Bomb lefts. Ironically enough, they should have made him red and Trump yellow because Trump is actually orange and Xi is actually red for communism. Spuds. Oh my God. Instead of Phineas, I take the boys to get Spuds. I got contacts with Teamsters Mobilized. Where do I link y'all up to get in contact? Okay, chatter. I said I would do it in the future. Please don't be like that. Don't do that thing where you just like incessantly spam it. All right. We got a lot going on. Please don't do this. All right. All right. Let's continue. Especially considering how difficult it is for me to fucking schedule anything with people physically, you know, it just we'll figure it out. Chatter was being nice guy. I know. I'm just predicting that it will turn into the chatter spamming when instead we're freaking spamming right now. The link is Kneecap later today. No, they're not later today. I'm drowning in links. Help. Yes, I'm drowning out your noise so that another accent, unique regional variant he's completely oblivious to. No, I wait, what? I did this Scouser accent on purpose. No, I know how to do a Scouser accent. I mean, it's difficult and I'm not very good at it, but I know the distinction. I can tell. Joe Rogan versus the neocons. Yeah, we're gonna do that. Flexing potatoes on people who went through a potato famine is crazy, not gonna lie. Ever find out anything about the 10K jump on the stream yesterday? No, I did not. Hassan, will any guy ever like me? Yes. You just gotta keep going. Take Kneecap to some real Mexican food. Yeah, that too. I want to do that. All right. Let's do it. All right. Let's do it. Let's get it started. Let's get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. Do we have a playlist lined up? Does anyone have the link to the playlist? What happened with the pod with Iron Mouse? It did not happen. I don't know. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and MBs, let's get started. She says China is not afraid as Beijing hits U.S. with 125% tariff. Let's get it started. Let's get it twisted. Lots to talk about today. China on the come up. China on the rise. You already know what it is. You already know what it's about. Okay. What's that one song called? The Does anyone have? Do you know what I'm singing? Woman Jean. Yes, that's the one. Thank you, chatter. You immediately nailed it. I think I did a good job with that. Okay, I think I did a good job with that. All right, you feel me? You feel me? Here.
我们今生注定是沧桑，苦之来要笑着走过呀，朋友啊，让我们一起牢牢铭记呀，我们今生兄弟情一场，我们今生注定是。
Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna play that a lot today. Just so you know, I'll probably play that a decent amount today. Leave the singing to the video, bro. I don't even know what he's saying. He's saying like crying when we came, we must walk with smiles. Our lives are destined to be full of, what is it? Vicissitudes or something. I don't even know what that word means, but it's just like, I don't know what the hell he's saying, but is just going crazy with it. Has smoked so many bogues, like you can hear it in his voice after feeling sad. As a Chinese, always dies of cringe every time I listen to the song randomly on your stream, law. Why? Also, as a Chinese, you should know that there have been numerous different China phases at the Hasanabi broadcast. Back in the day, it was before it was Red Sun in the Sky. It was what was it? I think it's like from Taiwan, actually. The famous, the other famous song that is like the intro song to a TV show. Oh yeah, Shu Hao Piao Piao. Shu Hao Piao belong far. Yeah. That's the one. Yecha is not Chinese, brother. It's freaking North Korean. That's crazy. Hassan is also Chinese and he doesn't cringe. Checkmate. Exactly. I'm white Chinese, man. I'm white Chinese. You already know this. Yeah. I was so there's always been a different Chinese song, like a Mandarin song that I sing throughout various different phases of this broadcast over the course of the past like 6 years. So Brother How was the original? Oh yeah, I mean this is a totally separate. This is something different. This is something different. Wait, what is happening with this fucking thing? Brother How was so this man was so ahead of the curve. Like, think about it, dude. About how ahead of the game he was. This video is from like 2012. This guy didn't even see the one belt, one road. He was just like, I will be the belt. I will be the road. You know what I mean? Like, he was like, I can't wait for Chinese liberation. I can't wait for Chinese prosperity. I can't wait. It's crazy. He was the belt. I think they saw him and were like, we gotta connect. we gotta connect with Africa. Okay, all jokes aside, obviously, Maoist thought, Mao Zedong thought Maoism not only is perfectly applicable in African nations, but also was very popular at the time. But you know, there's a period of when it kind of went away a little bit, and this guy brought it back, I think. So he was the belt and the road. It sounds like you would sing this in the shower for a couple of minutes until the shampoo bottle. Sultan Road, not one belt, one road. It's both, by the way. I know people correct me, but like you can say belt and road, or you can say one belt, one road. It's not. Someone corrected me on that before, but like I think initially it was called one belt, one road. It's a direct translation. I feel like, I don't know why, I feel like he's Black Brace Belden. Like he is. I don't know where he's from. Someone in the chat said Nigerian, but like he is the Brace Belden. He was just locked in. Anyway, record this yourself and send it as your audition tape. Yeah. One Belden, one road. Brace for the one Belden. All right. This is what you're looking for. What? This? Classic. Have you listened to the Tronon episode in Chinese? Yeah, I got annoyed that they actually straight up posted it in Mandarin in its entirety. That was hella annoying because I thought it was just a meme. I thought the episode was going to be just a meme and like the beginning was going to be in Mandarin. They were going to be like, haha, just kidding. Like, nope. They did the whole thing. They did an entire podcast for like 2 hours and then they put it through the AI Mandarin translation app and made it entirely in Mandarin. It's worse than the last time when they did the pro-Israel bit. It was an old ep, I think. Yeah, last year, I think it was their April Fool's episode last year was when they were going to talk about, you know, how they're actually technically pro-Israel or something, or hear from the Israeli side, and it's just crying noises the entire time. At least I knew that was not, at least I knew to click away from that one. But the Mandarin one, I was just like, was scrolling through and I'm like, is it going to change? Or is it just going to be Mandarin the entire time? What the fuck is happening? Did an AOC interview? Oh, I didn't even know that one. I didn't even see that one. Pro-Israel bit. Are you sure about that? Yes, I'm sure about that. Anyway, all memes aside, let's get back to the serious stuff. All right. Trade standoff, trade war, tariff standoff. China digs in. Let's take a look.
Digging in. Americans are waking up to a whole new escalation in the global trade war. Beijing is hiking its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods today from 84% to 125%. And for the first time since this all started, we're actually hearing from the Chinese President Xi Jinping himself. Xi's saying that his nation is, quote unquote, not afraid, and also warning, quote, there are no winners in a trade war, and going against the world will only lead to self-isolation. This after President Trump raised tariffs on Chinese goods even higher, 145% now, as we're all trying to keep track. The White House says they're waiting for China to pick up the phone. China.
We're so dumb. We're so stupid. I'm sorry. There will come a point where the bottom will fall out of this. And I think Americans will come to the cold, hard realization, like getting slapped in the face with some very cold water to hopefully shake you out of this stupor, that we don't have the motion that we think we fucking have when it comes to global trade, at least. I've been saying this for so long. I've been saying this nonstop. And I'm telling you right now, like, I think given the Chinese track record, Xi will most likely extend a helping hand at a certain point. Given their track record, given what they always do, given the restraint that they demonstrate with regular frequency, I suspect that China will bail us out again. Okay? And I don't mean just like in the 2008 style situation, because they want stability. They want stability. They want the regular business as usual politics to continue so they can continue along their journey of development. And it's very frustrating. It is very, very frustrating that America is trying to fuck up the world in this incredibly and moving into this unsustainable place with no discernible, tangible policy goals attached to it. It is a real, I'm fucking up global trade because I'm bored moment from the Trump administration. I'm telling you right now, I know, I've read the tea leaves. I'm telling you, I know what their actual stated goals are. I know what the marketing of said goals look like. I know what they're trying to do. I know what the American trade agenda is and has been. And yet I recognize how disordered this is. I do agree China will probably budge first, but I don't know. Trump and Xi's relationship is very inconsistent and confusing. I don't think that this is about the personal relationship between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. I think this is about stability and what China wants. We often ascribe our own personal ambition and motivations and project that upon our enemies, China being the enemy in this conversation. They are not in the business, at least at this stage, they're not in the business of global dominance. So you're making the prediction that China blinks first. I don't think it's even a blinking situation. I think it will, at this point, given the runway that China has, both due to its own internal governance, due to the fact that it's a command economy, due to the fact that it has so much manufacturing power, there is no blinking first. If China wanted to fucking, here's what a country that would actually want to dominate the globe would do in this circumstance. I'm Chinese, okay? Let's say I'm Chinese. What do I do in this situation, okay? I'm one of Xi Jinping's advisors. I'm one of those guys that's like, I don't want stability, okay? I want to destroy America. I want to destroy the dollar. You know what I would do? I would go to all of our fucking trading partners, all of the Asian trading partners, the European trading partners, set up trade deals, tell them we will actually not flood your marketplace with our goods that are going to wipe out your own domestic economies. We're going to play ball with you, but on the one condition that you just fucking short the American dollar to the best of your ability. Just at a moment where the American reserves are at its weakest, where confidence is diminished in the dollar, we will now move in the direction of de-dollarization. They're not doing that. They're not doing that. There's a lot of foreign debt. Like a lot of foreign nations, Japan, China, many of these countries own a lot of the American foreign debt. You could just forcibly claw that away from the United States of America because China, unlike the United States of America right now, has more industrial stability. Like China and the yuan could technically become the global trade currency. It's not something that is in their interest overall. But if they wanted to dominate the globe, they could do that. This is a great opportunity for them. Just like it was a great opportunity for them to forcibly take Taiwan if they wanted to do so when America was too busy dealing with Israel and dealing with Ukraine and Israel at the same time. But they didn't do that. Why didn't they do that? Why didn't they do that? Because perhaps they're a lot more restrained and a lot more focused on the future than we are, that they don't want to fucking rock the boat. So this is precisely the reason why I don't think that they're going to do any of those things. This is precisely the reason why I think they're going to inevitably offer a lending hand. They're going to extend a hand of help to the United States of America, even though America's fucking up global trade on its own right now. America is doing an own goal. And don't tell me what Asman is saying. Asman is saying China started this war because they steal and copy products. Stop. Stop. I'm talking about people who are adults, who are fucking PhDs and famous economists who are dropping the ball and failing to comprehend what is actually happening, what is actually unfolding in front of their eyes. And you're fucking telling me about Asmongold? What the fuck does he know about global trade? Shut up! Knowledgeable people are also oblivious to what is happening in front of their fucking eyes. And you're telling me about like a dude with cockroaches that fucking roll over him. Who cares what his fucking take is on this? Are you kidding me? He's just repeating whatever the fuck Republicans are saying, okay? And they know even less. What are you talking about? Like if there was a tier list of people who are fucking oblivious to what the fuck is going on here, I think Asmongold wouldn't be too high up there, especially because the Republicans that he is channeling and repeating the talking points of are also fucking oblivious. Anyway, with the way bond yields have already risen drastically, if all the foreign bondholders mass sold it, it would cause yields to skyrocket and America would default on their debts to the American bondholders. That's what I'm saying. I feel like, look, I'm not an economist and I'm not the most knowledgeable on this stuff. It is a little confusing to me, for sure. But I do feel like if there was an opportunity to destabilize the United States of America, this would be the very opportunity to do so. All you need is a couple, maybe like Japan, or at least a couple trade partners that hold a lot of American treasuries to just force America to default on their debt. Something that hasn't ever happened because it is the globe. It can't happen because the entire global trade is on the American dollar. It is the most stable thing that you can buy into. And I think that that would create so much instability that obviously China doesn't want that. And it's crazy because like in some ways, I think Donald Trump is basically forcing China's hand to play ball by unironically nuking itself. Because if America nukes itself and the entire global trade system collapses, we're fucked. Everyone is fucked. China is fucked as well. They're less fucked than America, but everyone is fucked. So it's the Nixonian madman theory in action. But instead of saying we're going to nuke our enemies, Donald Trump is literally about to press the nuclear button to nuke America. Do you see what I'm saying? It is unironically the Shane Gillis clip. Like that is Donald Trump's madman theory, is just putting a gun to his mouth and going, oh, I'll pull the fucking trigger. I'll pull it. Yeah, if no one wants to purchase the US dollar, if no one has confidence in the US dollar, which is the currency that global trade is done on, that means it's fucking over, okay? The American hegemony has perished and has perished in a much shorter timeline than a country like China would want. I'm deporting myself to Mexico. There is nowhere. The irony is you can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere. If the dollar collapses, right? If the dollar collapsed tomorrow, there is nowhere that you can go to. Like nowhere is safe. America is the world. This is what I always stress to people, where it's like, people will be like, Hassan, have you ever thought about leaving America and going somewhere? And I'm like, going where? There is nowhere I can go to. You know what I mean? There's not really anywhere I can go that is outside of the sphere of influence of empire, except maybe like China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran. But even then, global trade collapses in its entirety. Even those places are not fucking safe either. There's just nothing. There's instability all around. How would they benefit from by America being around longer? Easy. The current existing global trade scheme that the United States of America has designed, where we exploit the global south for basically slave wages, and in exchange for just a paper IOU that we give them that we can print permanently, everybody gets to, or not everybody, but China at least gets to develop. Okay. And that's kind of the problem here, because out of all of these countries that we have exploited through this exact same scheme, China is the only one that has been able to develop and become a competitive power. If you follow the World Trade Organization or any number of different like geopolitical experts that talk about the global economy, that are neoliberals themselves or love capitalism, and they constantly talk about how bountiful capitalism has been for the third world, this is unironically what they are technically pointing to. China, in the ways that it has developed itself over the course of multiple decades through foreign capital coming in and then engaging in like even distribution of said foreign capital, has been able to do the thing that these guys claim other countries are doing. But if they do the thing that these guys always say, which is global capitalism has uplifted the entire planet and taken them out of poverty, it's a wonderful thing. If all of these countries had actually done that, America would collapse. This is the reality. And the only reason why China's been able to do it is because China does have a long-term stability vision. Do people not understand the sheer scale of American consumption? Nowhere is capable of instantly filling that void if our economy collapses. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about the entire global trade system collapsing, not just because the American consumption engine has fallen apart, but also because the dollar is no longer sustainable. Everything you know, everything that you think of is everything you know, and everything that you think of revolves around like one singular global reserve currency being the currency that has the most stability that everyone can do trade over. It's backed by not just the American assets, which there's plenty of, but it's also backed by 800 military bases around the planet. This is the entire game. It would cause, it would basically cause a global reset. Bitcoin not, right? Yeah, I love people that say Bitcoin because they think that the energy grids that Bitcoin needs would be running. Yeah, dude, Bitcoin, for sure. Bitcoin will save us. The only way Bitcoin would save us is if China owned all the Bitcoin, okay, and controlled it. And then we could instantly switch over to Bitcoin as the global currency somehow. It just wouldn't happen. Anyway, let's continue.
It says essentially the same thing about the United States. This very clearly showing what a tit for tat looks like, sending markets tumbling Thursday. But President Trump still optimistic when meeting with his.
USA is 30% of our consumption. 30% of consumption, top 10% of incomes is over 50% of our local consumption. If prices rise, it would only affect the lower 90% in the US. This roughly translates to 15% globally. I think we're overestimating our worth. I think you're misunderstanding. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something entirely different than our consumption engine. I think our consumption power is significant for global trade. In terms of our relationship with China, it's not negligible, but it's negligible enough for China to basically weather the storm. But that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about what could potentially happen if another world power that has the capability of becoming the global reserve currency, which I don't even think China has at this point, or at least has the appetite to become that at this point, because that would require too much foreign intervention, way more than I think what China would choose to do at this stage. It would completely collapse at this stage. If the dollar collapsed and it started defaulting, all of a sudden the entire system is broken. It is the very nature of the dollar's inability to collapse that makes it the global reserve currency in which trade is conducted on. I'm talking about the entire system collapsing, which is crazy because I think Donald Trump, as stupid as he is, kind of understands that reality, which is why he's just basically fucking forcing all of these vassal states to do this double tithing system where not only have we benefited from offering IOUs to other countries with a profound dollar purchasing power where we don't have to do the manufacturing, we just get to, take over the benefits. But then also on top of that, now you have to pay us for the privilege of us dominating the fucking entire planet with our global reserve currency status. All simultaneously, you have to pay us for that privilege. And there's not really anything you can do about it because if it falls apart, then everything falls apart. Yeah, it's a real have you said thank you once type situation to the rest of the planet. But like I said, if China truly had the ambition that we ascribe to them in terms of dominating the globe, this is their moment. They would just fuck America right now. They would literally fuck the entire planet right now, crash the dollar, turn around and say, well, you guys sure need a manufacturing engine, a country that is stable, a country that has a lot of industrial output, a country that, I don't know, controls 50+% of all chemicals procured, a country that dominates in sectors like some of the leading tech sectors, like fucking 80% of drones coming out of China, all that sort of stuff. Like a country like that could become the global hegemonic superpower and rewrite the entire rules of global trade. Obviously, I don't think that is something that they're interested in. They could sell their dollar reserves and U.S. Treasury bonds and occupy Taiwan in the same day. Exactly. I mean, or if they could have occupied Taiwan when America was busy with Israel and Ukraine and getting fucking dicked on. If they wanted to fuck up the bag, if they were truly as belligerent as we claim they are, which is pure projection and nothing else, there are many opportunities for them to do so. So I think right now, when they say we're going to fight till the very end, I think it's just a moment where China is showing the world how unstable America is. But I do think that inevitably they will offer a helping hand to fix the situation in spite of America's inability or interest in stabilizing global trade. There will be a little gift, I think, that Xi will give after making everyone around the globe understand how fucking unstable the United States of America is, where one singular psycho could just completely nuke global trade in its entirety. Once everyone is assuredly familiar with American instability, he will turn around and he'll be like, yeah, we'll fix it. Don't worry. That's my suspicion. This doesn't mean that things are going to be good in the interim for Americans in general, and especially the American working class. It certainly will not. There's going to be a lot of unstable times in our immediate future. Having said that, that's my prediction. Maybe I'm wrong, How does he fix it? He offers a aesthetic assurance to Donald Trump that makes Trump feel like he won something out of this. And every dumb fucking piglet in America is cackling like the hyenas that they are, that like, we did it. We dominated China. We're still number one, baby. Psh, hell yeah. That's what it is. That's what I think is going to happen, because these guys know how to fucking manipulate this moron. Okay. That's the reason why this moron constantly says, oh, Xi Jinping, we're good friends. He likes me. I like him. We got very good relationships. Like, every single smart statesman knows how to fucking manipulate this donkey, okay? All you got to do is be like, yeah, you're awesome. You're so hot. You're so brave. You're so smart. Yeah, we're really fucking you over on trade, That's all they need to do. They don't believe it. They don't agree with it. They know he's a dumbass. They know America is unstable, okay? And you want to know what's really funny about all of this? At a certain point, when we look back at all of the bounties of American empire, especially in the late stage capitalism, the neoliberal post-Reagan era, we got to look back at all this fucking wealth transfer that took place where we generated so much value. Where did it go? Someone's got to ask this question. Trillions of fucking dollars over multiple decades. Where the fuck did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? Someone's got to ask that question. Where did it go? Because all of these cheap, affordable goods, they're coming to the United States of America. We're purchasing them. That's fine. You know, that's great. It makes you feel like your living conditions are significantly better. And yet, in that same time frame, we are creating complex financial tools, complex financial technology. We're selling that to the rest of the world. Where is that going? Where is all that bounty going? Where is all that wealth going? Why is it not going back to building the American infrastructure? Why is that not going back to ensuring that Americans have decent paying jobs? All of the raping and pillaging of the fucking entire planet and none of the bounties with the exception of affordable treats so that you feel like you are on top. You feel like your living standards are better year over year. This is at the heart of the contradictions within global capitalism. That's it. Yeah, I saw this relevant clip from Jack Ma. Exactly. He's asked a similar question as well. You know, he's gone back and forth on his loyalties. But here, let's hear what he says here.
The Americans said, we just want to control the IP, we just want to technology, we just want the brand, and leave the lower end jobs for the world. Great strategy. Past 30 years, IBM, Cisco, Microsoft, they made tons of money. The profit they made are much more than the 4 largest banks in China. But where'd the money go? Past 30 years, the American had 13 wars, spending $14.2 trillion. The money going there. What if they spend a part of that money on building up the infrastructure, helping the white collars and blue collars? How strategy good it is. You're supposed to spend money on your own people. And the other money, which I'm curious about, is that when I was young, I heard America is bad. Ford and Boeing, those big manufacturing companies. The last 10, 20 years, I heard about is Silicon Valley and Wall Street. The money go to the Wall Street. And what happened? Year 2008, the financial crisis wiped out $19.2 trillion USA alone. They wiped out all the white collars and destroyed 34 million jobs globally. So what if the money is not Wall Street? What if the money spent on the Middle East, Middle West of the United States, developing the industry there? That could be changed a lot. So it's not the other countries steal jobs from you guys. It is your strategy. Okay, but
what do you think?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It is endless profit seeking that is getting to a stage, endless profit seeking that has caused domestic instability in this country, that is also causing global instability. Because the reality of the matter is, if America wanted to extend a lifeline to American empire, it would at least abide by like Keynesian principles and engage in more redistributive policies in an effort to ensure that it has like at least some semblance of a manufacturing base, or rather good paying jobs and less instability internally in the nation, so that a dumb fuck like Donald Trump couldn't actually rise to power. But these guys are so short-term profit oriented, profit that stays at the top, profit that has to be retained by the most powerful individuals because of their supercharged pro-capitalist dogmatic ways of thinking, that they have basically fucked it up. They used, abused, and pillaged all the way to the very end. Now we're staring down the barrel of the gun, where the gun is actually being pointed at us. In the process, China was able to take advantage of that situation and the endless appetite for capital owners and the endless defense of capital owners from the American empire to basically say, yeah, we'll manufacture your shit. It's cool. We would love to do that. Thank you for the privilege. Our people are poor. Our people are suffering. We would love to take advantage of the foreign capital that comes into our country. We will, of course, take your IP as well in the process. You already know that that's going to happen. That's basically a handshake deal. And if China had kept up its end of the bargain and remained poor and did not engage in redistributive policies, then America would have been fine with the super profits, or at least would have allowed, at least would have created this imbalanced trade structure. Hey, Fiona, stop. Why does she do this all the time? And she like wags her tail too. Hey. Get out. Fiona is old. She's barking at my dad. Anyway. Yeah, Kaya don't give a fuck. All right, let's continue. Getting back to the matter at hand.
Cabinet.
We think we're in very good shape. We think we're doing very well. Again, there'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
Stock futures are right now up across the board. Let's see if they stay a beautiful thing today. But what is concerning investors a lot right at the moment, the U.S. dollar falling to its weakest level against the euro in 3 years. CNN's Elena Treen at the White House for us once again. CNN's Mark Stewart, we're not letting him go. He's in Beijing for us. Mark, tell us more about China's counterpunch and what it's going to mean.
Hi, Kate. Good morning. Look, none of this is a surprise. These latest tariffs are very much in the Chinese playbook. But what's very attention-getting to me is the fact that China is now saying it's not going to raise tariffs any higher, saying it has other weapons, almost making fun of the United States for raising the stakes, raising the numbers so high. Let me share with you some remarks we got late today from a government official here in Beijing who said that the United States is engaging in nothing more than a numbers game with no real economic significance, going on to say the United States is exposing itself as a participant in weaponizing tariffs, as a tool of bullying and coercion, turning itself into a joke. So that is the latest where China stands in this back and forth tit for tat. The other big headline of the day is that we are hearing from Chinese President Xi Jinping, really the first time since this whole trade war escalated to such a high level. The big headline is that he is saying China is not afraid. These are remarks that were made with the Spanish Prime Minister here in Beijing.
Yeah. What's up? How can anyone look at the situation right now and go, oh, dude, we're really fucking long dicking the Chinese right now. We're killing it, dude. We're killing it. Like, how do you look? How can you be so stupid? Like Donald Trump's statements, if you are optics focused, if you're like a fucking animal, okay, barely capable of critical thought, all right, you can still look at the optics of the situation of Donald Trump's attitude shifting dramatically over the course of the past week, where he went from, we're going to destroy China. China is terrified. They're so scared, to, why won't China call me? China, you really need to call me. Please call me, China. China, call me. I've learned Mandarin. I say, what's up, Beijing, too? Call me. Too much winning. Like he literally went from saying China is going to come and eat our ass, they're fucking peasants, to like, please call me. It would be really nice if you called me. How is that not triggering any fucking red flags in your mind? You can be the dumbest person on the planet and still recognize when someone is being desperate. And it's not the Chinese that are being desperate in this process. It's crazy. I expect people to at least be like, I don't know, maybe I expect too much from Americans, but I really do. I really do expect people to just like, take their heads out of their assholes a little bit for a brief moment and recognize what is happening right in front of their fucking eyes, you know? Yeah, Victor Gao is popping off. Let's see what he had to say.
The problem is that in this scenario, to use your metaphor, the US has the bigger gun. And so China ends up having more to lose from this trade war, doesn't it? You know, it can't sustain the loss of 15% of its export
no.
market, i.e. what you export to the US.
She's trying to come back in here. No, you lost your privileges. She barked. She barked at my dad when he walked in. She barked too much. She was trying to push the gate so that she can come back in here. Bro, the Saudis rode this donkey to the bank. You think Xi and Putin can't? Oh my gosh, she's still trying to. Okay, here. No more barking though. If you bark again, I'm kicking you out. All right, I let her in. She was doing a protective you and you banned her, let her in? No. Look at this. Look at this little baby. Look at this little fucking baby. Acting like she's all innocent. Do you see this? Are you innocent? Fifi? Fiona? Fiona? Okay, we gave her the ban appeal. Fifi needs a Gucci bed. She'll be fine. She barks at billionaires. Yeah. She read the AI article that said my dad was the richest person in Turkey and she hates billionaires, so she started barking at him. She changed up. Anyway, let's get back. So the anchor asked, like, don't you think America has a bigger gun in this process? Okay. Don't you think America has more to gain from engaging in this back and forth? Let's see what his reaction is.
Ends up having more to lose from this trade war, doesn't it? You know, it can't sustain the loss of 15% of its export market, i.e. what you export to the US.
Not at all. China is fully prepared to fight to the very end because the world is big enough that the United States is not the totality of the market in the world. So if the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care. We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States, and we survived. Right. And if the United States wants to bully China, we will deal with the situation without the United States. And we expect to survive for another 5,000 years.
The problem is that in this scenario, to use...
I mean, look, this is just posturing. If I'm being really real right now, it's just posturing, okay? They do care because they don't want America to collapse. Because if America collapses, then the entire global trade collapses, which is part of the reason why I think that they will eventually extend a helping hand to the United States of America and we'll say, it's fine, you know, yes, you did it. You destroyed us in this. You destroyed us in this process. You really did. You killed us. And then all of the dumbest people all the dumbest people on the fucking planet that keep looking at how the market's turned green today, I guess things are fine, even though basic goods are going to be at least double the price now. Those fucking dumbasses will turn around and be like, we did it. Woo, we did it. We fucking destroyed China. Hell yeah. They're just posturing at this point to show America, but more importantly than the United States of America, America's global trading partners, allies and adversaries, and neutral nations alike, that one of the two polar opposites, okay, the two poles of power on the planet, one spells disorder and instability in the long term, the other will maintain stability. This is an incredible opportunity for China to show everyone, including the EU, for example, that it is the new game in town that will have long-term stability and commitment to long-term stability in mind. I don't know. I think they're serious on their non-interventionist policy. No, I that's what I think too. Why wouldn't China like to be the sole world superpower? Because with great power comes great responsibility. And most importantly, China, it looks within. They don't care. They don't give a shit about having 800 military bases. I mean, what Jack Ma says there is basically Jack Ma being a person who, when he stepped out of line, had to go away for a little bit. But in that moment, he is speaking as a vessel for the Chinese state and their interests. There is no reason to assume that thought is not also reflected by the CPC's attitude in general, which is we care about building cities. We care about improving the material conditions of our citizens more than we care about global dominance, because global dominance requires a shit ton of money and effort to be spent in the direction of building a robust military apparatus and constantly engaging in interventions all around the globe. They know that. They see America failing right now. It is, I think it quite literally is a matter of thinking in quarters, which is what capitalism forces you to do, as opposed to thinking in centuries.
And according to state media, he said that China is going to continue to remain.
Their lack of interest in global dominance does not come from... Their lack of interest in global dominance does not stem from the fact that they're magnanimous, dude. It is still a self-interested position. What do you not understand? I'm not saying they're fucking awesome and kind-hearted. This is something that people do not comprehend about it, okay? Their lack of interest in global dominance does not come from how magnanimous they are, okay? Their lack of interest in global dominance comes from self-interest. That's it. It's not altruistic. I've told you time and time again, there is literally a group of people, a group of peasants that are armed and willing to fight against one of the only holdouts in China's backyard, which is an American military base, okay? The Philippines. You have Maoist rebels that are waiting, primed. What does China do? China has helped the Filipino government as opposed to the fucking Maoist rebels. You think America in that situation would not arm the fuck out of those rebels, would not do everything in its power to make sure that those Maoist rebels are primed for overthrowing the Filipino government? Are you kidding me? They're ideologically aligned. They're fucking Maoists. What are we talking about? Why the fuck does China not do that? This is an example that I use all the time. Like, there's no reason. People look at like what they did in Hong Kong or fantasize about what they might do to Taiwan all the fucking time as a reason as to why China has like imperial ambitions. Okay? They care more about stability than anything else. Hassan, you took my $6 lying about TTS. Shut the fuck up and refund it, dumb fuck, okay? When have you ever heard text-to-speech on this broadcast? I got to change that, actually, on my fucking stream as well. I'm like, no one ever really gives donations like that anyway. But imagine fucking chirping about that when you can literally directly access me by just writing in the chat for fucking free and be an annoying little douchebag as you are right now. You know the TTS doesn't fucking work. Last time I used text-to-speech was fucking 5 years ago. I'm gonna take it out right now. Actually, I'm gonna take it out of my fucking panel right now. Dumb fuck. He's just chirping in here. Take it. Yeah, just refund it. Refund it, dipshit. Good. Fiona, I will kick you out. I will kick you out. Stop barking. There you go. I changed it. I said, don't know if you want. I don't care. No TTS. There you go. I hope that's comparing 70s China to the USA is crazy talk, dude. You have no idea what you're talking about. Wait, what? 70s China to the United States? When did I do that? By saying they didn't arm Philippines? Do you think the Filipino Maoist rebel groups don't exist currently? I'm talking about what China did under Duterte, where they literally helped the Duterte government. The fuck? The rebels are still there, dumbass. And the Chinese government has literally sided with the Duterte government at the time because they thought that would actually be a better method of ensuring that the Filipino government plays ball with them when they're trying to create security cooperation agreements in their own fucking backyard in the South China Sea. That's not in the 70s.
Confident it's going to remain focused, saying there are no real winners in the trade war. Kate, the language that we're hearing from Xi Jinping is very consistent with what we've heard from other government officials over the last few days. And as you mentioned, as far as the possibility of a phone call between Xi Jinping and President Trump, not in the near future. That's the messaging that we're feeling from Beijing, at least.
And that is quite a statement that you got from that government official. Just, the gloves are off now in terms of how the two sides are going to be talking about it. We will need to stand by and see how Donald Trump responds to that. But also stand by with me, Mark. I'm going to get to the White House and get to Elena Treen here. Elena, are you getting any reaction yet this morning to this escalation from China?
So far, the White House has not responded to the latest remarks from China or from President Xi. But what I will say is that
who is yelling in the background? What is happening? Someone's yelling in the newsroom, or they're yelling in the room with Trump. Someone's yelling. I think the peasant stuff was too much of a slap to the face. Yes. But that's good propaganda internally to be like, yeah, there might be a period of downturn, right? But we'll overcome it. But we have to overcome it because these guys are calling you peasants.
the White House has been very dug in on its position as it relates to China. They're acting very defiant in this kind of trade tit for tat that we are seeing. But I think what's been very clear so far, Kate, is that this position is not going to be tenable for much longer. At some point, the two sides are going to need to really open lines of communications. Now, we actually have a story out this morning kind of breaking all of this down. But at the crux of it, Kate, is this. Two White House officials tell me that the president and the U.S. will not reach out to China first. The president has made it clear to his team and to his advisors that he wants China to come to them. And really, he wants to have a high-level meeting.
I told you already, China will. I think China will call first. They'll use this period of instability to show the rest of the world what is going on. They'll use this period of instability to show the world how dangerous and unstable America is. Like, no offense, Sam, but you haven't talked at all about how the fact that the majority of Americans have some obvious racism towards Chinese people. Wait, what? Okay, yeah, they do. How can I have a conversation about, like, how can we have a conversation about global trade without some fucking radlib coming in here and being like, you know, Americans are very xenophobic? I know, dude. Who cares? Okay, that's not what we're talking about right now. Like, yeah, I know. Americans are very racist by and large. You know, it is what it is.
Directly between him and President Xi himself. Now, this has been what the White House has been communicating to Beijing for several months now. But on the other side, we also know that Beijing does not really want to have that high-level meeting. What they've been trying to do is open communications at a lower level. And so, really, there's been this stalemate and no talks at all going on right now between the Trump administration and that of...
Like, the American racist attitude towards China is so negligible in this conversation. You think that's the reason why Trump is making these decisions? No, that's just a marketing technique that will, just like the peasant statement is a great opportunity for the Chinese government to tell its citizenry to remain strong in the face of oppression, because a big part of Chinese development comes off of a big part of why they love Mao. A big part of Chinese development comes off of the backs of a century of humiliation from Western powers. Okay. And of course, Japan as well. But like that in and of itself is something that's very important. So it's a galvanizing factor there. But the real reasons as to why these great powers behave in the ways that they do is not because of fucking racism. I would go so far as to say it's still very much the fear of losing capitalism and the dominance of capital, global capital, more so than racism against the Chinese or Orientalism. Racism against the Chinese for the average citizen allows, I don't know, like the fucking Asmongold chat to keep masturbating to a world that does not exist, where America is still America is still very powerful and not the fucking declining empire of belligerent morons, you know? That's it. It helps the dumbass Americans go, yeah, well, you know, things are like $30 more. A t-shirt now costs $78, but let me tell you, okay, it's still fine because my dear leader's still going to show what's what to the goddamn Chinese. Base material, dude, you are so uneducated and weak on Maoism in China. Maoism is Stalinism in China today, is not socialist. They are capitalist. Oh my God, dude. I'm not saying China today is Maoist, you fucking dingus. Of course it's not Maoist. their socialist attitude has evolved over time. It does not matter if a government actually had interest in foreign intervention. There are still existing Maoist rebel groups that they could use to their advantage to destabilize foreign countries in their fucking backyard and potentially even overthrow. If they wanted to do America shit, there is plenty of opportunity for China to do America shit with ideologically aligned movements, militia movements. My statement on the unwillingness of the modern Chinese government in engaging in this sort of intervention is the point. That is the point. Yes, they're not Maoist. Mao Zedong thought still influences a lot of the underpinning of Chinese attitudes and Chinese development, Chinese prosperity, but it's not a complete Maoist country. It's not. It's not at all. And no, I don't think Maoism is Stalinism. Maoism is Stalinism. I am a liberal.
President Xi. Now,
What is it with leftists and their obsession with Marxist orthodoxy, despite the fact that China itself is adhering to Marxism by examining their own material conditions? I mean, it's ironic because, like, in some ways, I understand why you would hold on to a mythological understanding of what previous relatively successful socialist experiments have looked like. I get it, because it's not like we have living, breathing socialism here in the United States of America. So you look to historical examples of where socialism has been attempted. Okay. A socialist transitional state has been attempted. This is, USSR is, I think, a valid project to point to. But then, ironically enough, that person then turns around and goes, but they haven't adhered to the principled Marxist orthodoxy. When you talk about Stalin's attempts or Mao's attempts, like, they're not also adhering to principled Marxist orthodoxy either. And they shouldn't, regardless. There is, like, I think it's kind of silly to have this attitude. You have to ultimately adhere to your living, breathing, existing material conditions and restructure your attitude. This is precisely the reason why I'm not going to sit here and fucking be like, well, they're not a fully, they're not completely controlled by the workers, or whatever the fuck. It's like, well, they're doing a lot better than we are. Okay.
Hurdle of
nor did Lenin. Traditional Marxist Orthodox thought Germany is where the revolution would start. I think that was a fair assessment, to be fair. I think that was a fair assessment to make at the time.
We're hearing behind the scenes here at the White House is that the president believes that President Xi does not want to be seen as weak. And that's really as well kind of what's coming into this refusal and waiting to see who blinks first here. Now, we've also heard President Donald Trump say that he is confident that he can reach a deal at some point. He said that he believes China will come around. He said China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how to go about it. They're proud people.
I love the conversation that we're having in here right now about, like, whether China has a principled Maoist stance, okay, or if it's evolved in a direction that you don't think is appropriate, even though I haven't seen you fucking attempt living, breathing, existing socialism, okay. But meanwhile, our leadership in the United States of America is like, they're gonna call me tomorrow. Like, we are led by delusional morons, okay? And you guys over here are talking about, like, I'm a left com, or I'm an orthodox Marxian, and I don't think that China is doing enough, or whatever the fuck. It's like, dude, shut up. Just analyze what is in front of us, okay? Eyes on the prize, guys.
We've heard similar rhetoric from some of his top economic advisors saying that the ball is now in China's court. It's clear that's not how China sees this, but I think the key question now moving forward is that really how this all is decided is going to be on how much
0.0001% of communism has been built. Keep at it, comrades. Yes.
Pain are they willing to take? How much more pain are they willing to see in this escalation of these tariffs without any real communications to ensure there's an off-ramp?
Yeah, exactly. How much pain is the Trump administration willing to endure, and also the American people? How much pain is China willing to endure as well? Elena, stick with me. Mark, in this moment, this tit for tat has been going on now, for quite some time.
Yeah. No, it's Republicans. I say your enemies in China is global capital. And this person quote tweeted me and said, no, it's Republicans. Yeah, dude. Thank you for this assessment. I loved Republicans. So I'm glad. Asmigel suddenly watching China Observer content about how the U.S. tariffs are already causing the collapse of Chinese factories. He has no defense about even the most obvious propaganda. It's awesome. Yes, it's copium. They're engaging in copium. The problem is the more copium that you inhale, okay, the more copium that you inhale, the more delusional you become and the more confused you become when things don't pan out the way that you expect them to. Ultimately, there is one thing that you cannot overcome, though. No matter how much fucking crack cocaine you smoke in the form of China is collapsing any day now style content, which many liberals have consumed in perpetuity, there is going to come a breaking point. There's going to be a moment where you overdose, where you look at your bank account and realize that your money is no longer going the way that it did, okay? At the top of the hour, you're like, I want to subscribe. But now, because of the tariffs, the $6 a month subscription has turned into a $16 a month subscription because Amazon is no longer making as much money. Because Amazon Prime has now become infinitely more expensive, even though it's for free as long as you have an Amazon Prime account, which, by the way, in the interim, you should subscribe to me. Even though I don't actually serve top of the hour ad breaks, you should still subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get one free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully that's me. Thank you, Barry Balls, for the 10 community gifted subs. We still have Oilers in here. Okay. What is Amlo's a look say. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Hassan's Art of the Deal. Captain Tuga. Thank you for the 10 gifted. So fucking bad, bro. Thank you for the 5 gifted. Zylax with 100 big ones. HX Bone with a 5 gifted. Holy moly.
Why do you think, and what are you hearing about why Xi Jinping is speaking out in this moment?
I think really 2 reasons, Kate. Number one, simply being it's time. The Chinese economy, in addition to what's happening now, is already dealing for Xi Jinping to continue to build national...
They shut him off. They were like, no more China lies.
Unity to build national pride as it deals with yet another economic headwind. And then the other reason, if we look at the calendar, Xi Jinping is about to embark on a trip to Cambodia, to Vietnam, and Malaysia. These are key trading partners. These are relationships that he has been strengthening over the years. So as he builds bridges to these other nations, it's a way to also project some stability and to let the world know where China stands and that it is a strong, formidable player.
Absolutely. Vietnam, one of the nations also that the Trump administration is trying to prioritize and renegotiating a trade deal now. All of it related, likely none of it a coincidence in this moment. Mark, thank you so much. Elena at the White House for us, as always. Thank you guys very, very much.
Kit, while I have you, and this is actually some information that we just received right now from the State Council Tariff Commission, saying in a statement a short while ago that China will be raising retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports to 125%. This is information that's just coming into CNN right now, again, citing the State Council Tariff Commission. I'm curious what your immediate reaction is with your expertise, this counterstrike, shall we call it, from China directed at the U.S. business market.
It's not so surprising, you know, in the sense that they'll do the same. The key, of course, is that the U.S. is the big importer. The Chinese don't import anything like as much from the United States as the United States imports from China. So other countries come back with a tariff response. But the whole starting point from this in the United States was we're running a massive trade deficit and we don't run big surpluses with anybody. So we can raise tariffs on you. And if you retaliate, it has less impact on us net. So I'm not massively surprised. It just keeps the whole thing, the chance of quick resolution and of us getting back to a world of free trade seem to be fading. And there will be a negative growth effect around the world that it's going to be hard to avoid now.
Fascinating. And finally, Kit, I'm curious, what are some of those factors that, and speaking of foreign investment, what are some of those factors that can tend to scare foreign investors away from U.S. assets? Is it this talk of tariffs?
No, I think it's if the tariffs reduce the profitability of U.S. companies, do I need to own so many of my U.S. equities? They've done fantastically. Am I worried that if the Chinese decide they no longer want to hold U.S. treasuries, to the size that they used to, that I'm going to cause a loss of the US Treasury market's really important status as the safest asset in the world, and the rise in US yields. Some of it reflects weaker demand, so people are going to pay much more attention to Treasury auctions going forwards from here. But another part of it, quite simply, is foreigners have accumulated $65 trillion worth of US assets. That's a lot of your money to have parked in one place. And if you're worried that the US is withdrawing into itself a little bit more now, maybe you want to lighten up and put some of it somewhere else if you can.
We got to leave it there. Kit Jukes, thank you so much for your expertise. We're really glad that we have that insight. Appreciate you.
Have you seen this tweet from the Chinese Foreign Ministry? That's the official account of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
What this tweet says about the U.S.-China trade war, scary. I wonder if they'll bring up that Mao Zedong single-handedly assassinated 700 billion people. I can't believe that the Chinese embassy posted Mao. I'll have you know, he single-handedly murdered 700 billion people. And he'll do it again. Oh, Jesus. It's true. I was there. Yeah.
Of China, sharing a quote from the former Chinese dictator Mao Zedong during the Korean War, the last time the U.S. and China were shooting at each other. And the message was, China will not yield to the U.S. That's an important signal as to how China sees the current trade war with the
Come on, man. The famine was unironically bad and Mao made it worse. Absolutely. Except we never look at famine under fucking capitalism. There were thousands of famines that took place before the redevelopment of a agrarian society filled to the brim with fucking peasants and landlords. Okay? You have to adjust your expectations to the material realities at the time and then the material realities that came after. Wake up. We have abundance. We have a food surplus on the planet right now, and 14 million people still die every fucking year due to famine. Very different set of circumstances. Famine took place in South Korea at the time as well. Thousands of famines have taken place in China over thousands of years. Now look at the situation. The only way that South Korea was able to avoid famine, by the way, as opposed to like North Korea, for example, is because they got help. They got aid. And this is before we talk about actual directed famines that were man-made, whether it be the famine in Yemen that the Western-backed coalition forces led by the UAE and Saudi Arabia implemented on Yemen, the poorest nation on the planet, or the potato famine. Like, there's a shit ton of directional famine that other superpowers have done to the places that we're exploiting.
U.S., and that is that Chinese leaders do not want to be bullied by the U.S. president, and crucially, they don't want the Chinese people to see them being bullied by the U.S. president. That said, I'm told that Chinese leaders are open to negotiations with the U.S., but at this point, they don't see the channels open for those negotiations, and it's their perception the U.S. is not making an effort to open those channels. This is one more crucial point, that if and when negotiations happen, Xi Jinping is not going to meet Donald Trump, I'm told, at the very beginning of those negotiations. They want the agreements worked out first. They do not want a Zelensky in the Oval Office moment,
Disrespectful to the country.
where the Chinese leader would be surprised or embarrassed. And that's key as we wait for any movement here in this trade war between the world's two economic superpowers.
Just hours after President Trump called China's leader Xi Jinping a friend, China is calling President Trump's policies a joke and retaliating again. Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods are now at 125%. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods are 145%, meaning American consumers and businesses are likely in for more pain. Yale's Budget Lab is estimating that Trump's tariffs are going to cost at the average household $4,700 extra a year. Let's bring in Douglas Holtz-Eakin. He was the chief economist for the White House Council of Economic Advisors under President George W. Bush. He's also the president of the American Action Forum. Doug, always great to see you. What does this Chinese escalation of 125% on U.S. goods mean for the U.S. economy?
Well, it's just more bad news. And, you know, as you reported, we saw incredibly poor consumer sentiment numbers this morning. In that survey, by the way, consumers expected inflation to be 6.7%, the highest we've seen since 1981. So people are expecting costs to go up. Retaliation by China adds to those upward pressures.
Oh, no. Louisiana, immigration judge rules that Colombia activist Mahmoud Khalil can be deported. Oh, fuck. So all she needed to hear was the vague, generalized statements devoid of any evidence whatsoever to say that someone can be deported. This is a boundary break. This is precedent setting. We'll talk about that in a little bit. This country fucking sucks, dude.
Money has to come from somewhere. It'll come out of other purchases by households. That's going to slow the growth in the economy. And businesses are comparably concerned about the outlook. So the fallout of this trade war has been very significant already, although it has not yet shown up in rising unemployment, some of the other things you'd want to watch pretty carefully.
A spokesman for China's Commerce Ministry, Douglas, said that the U.S. is risking turning itself into a joke by using tariffs as a bullying and coercion tactic. How are other countries, do you think, viewing the U.S.? Because obviously it is very problematic for America if they are seen in all of this as the bad guy, and China is seen as being more reasonable.
Well, there's a real concern because the White House has yet to articulate what, for example, they want China to do in order to lower the tariffs. And they've encouraged, 70-odd countries to negotiate with the White House. But to what end? What is it that the White House wants from each of those 70 countries in order to get tariffs to go back down? So if you're just imposing tariffs and you provide no signal as to what the negotiation is about, you look like a bully. You're inflicting pain for no apparent reason. And I think there needs to be a real clear articulation of the strategy, because right now we're getting nothing but bad news out of these tariffs, and there's no pathway to getting some benefits at the other end.
The Chinese economy obviously relies heavily on manufacturing. Last year they had a $1.1 trillion trade surplus with the United States. How much pain do you think their economy can endure, given that the biggest market for them, the biggest market in the world, is the United States?
This is a significant blow to the China economy. There's no question about it. And we're going to see it slow sharply. Now, as you and I both know, the Chinese Communist Party has a tight grip on the country. Its ability to withstand that pain comes at the expense of its citizens, but it will withstand the pain. I'm worried about the fact that people have lost sight that the second largest manufacturer in the world is the United States, and that we do more manufacturing than Japan and Germany combined. And this whole thing is predicated on the notion that somehow the U.S. doesn't have any manufacturing anymore, and that's just not true. What we're doing now is taking the established manufacturing giants in the world, China and the United States, and pitting them one against the other. And as I said before, to what end? We both are going to see higher inflation. We're both going to see slower economic growth, and I'm not sure what we'll see in terms of benefits for the economy.
The U.S.-China piece, and of course it is so big, perhaps it should eclipse the 10% tariffs that are still in place across other countries, but they are. And you have the European Union's economy commissioner calling it a blow to the global economy. To what end there? Sure. Is that clear to you?
No. And I think that it's easy to lose perspective. I mean, it's been the longest 5-day week in recent economic history. So, but when the president proposed a 10% universal tariff on the campaign trail, there was essentially universal condemnation of the idea, and most economists saying, "Oh my goodness, that's a terrible idea. That's an enormous tariff. We don't want to see that." But we have that, and we have a lot on top of it. We've got steel and aluminum and cars, China, Mexico, Canada. So the fact that he paused the reciprocal tariffs doesn't mean that he's eased up. This is a tremendous imposition of tariffs, and the U.S. tariff rates are now extraordinarily high. And what will we get for that? It's far from obvious. I don't know what he wants to accomplish.
Maybe whatever he does accomplish in a deal, then he can herald as a success, which we've seen as a strategy of the president. So, yeah. But that's difficult for other countries as they try to figure out what they're doing, as you point out. Douglas Holtz-Eakin, thank you so much for being with us.
The United States, with President Trump and President Xi in China digging in their heels, China increasing their tariffs now to 125%, calling this back and forth, quote, silly. What has the reaction been? I'm wondering, you're in New York, but obviously you have so many contacts in China now. What has the reaction been, if there has been one, from the president, as we've been reporting, wanting a phone call now with President Xi?
Sure. Great to be here, Bianna. So President Trump has made it clear that he's waiting for a call from President Xi Jinping. It's not going to happen. The reason being, it's extremely rare for Chinese leaders to reach out to foreign leaders without any kind of preparation. Now we're just not seeing any kind of communication, high-level communication going on between Washington and Beijing. We had a big piece early this week talking about China's efforts to get to the core team of the Trump administration has repeatedly failed because there's such a mismatch between how China operates and the Trump administration's style. So what we're seeing right now is really a stalemate in communication between Trump administration and Beijing. And for Xi Jinping to reach out to Trump and have this conversation, and especially given the kind of pressure China is under right now, it's very, very unlikely.
Do you think this is an example of just having lack of knowledge about the Chinese culture, the Communist parties functioning there? I mean, because it seems as if roles are reversed. I remember when Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker, visited Taiwan, and there was a lot of frustration in China, in Beijing, as to how the President of the United States could have allowed that without understanding they're two separate branches. Are we seeing the opposite here, in your view, that there's a lack of understanding as to the nationalism, perhaps, and the pride from someone, an authoritarian like Xi Jinping, and
we're such a fucking ridiculous country, bro. It's just, I mean, how could this be read as anything but propaganda, especially at this very moment? You got Adolf Hitler in power right now doing deportation schemes for the crime of hurting the feelings of a foreign nation. And you're like, it's this real authoritarian, brutal dictatorship of Xi Jinping that doesn't want to play ball with America's belligerent nuking of the entire global economy. So that must be because they're incredibly nationalistic. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude?
Very, very unlikely.
Do you think this is an example of just having lack of knowledge about the Chinese culture, the Communist parties functioning there? I mean, because it seems as if roles are reversed. I remember when Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker, visited Taiwan, and there was a lot of frustration in China, in Beijing, as to how the President of the United States could have allowed that without understanding they're two separate branches. Are we seeing the opposite here, in your view, that there's a lack of understanding as to the nationalism, perhaps, and the pride from someone, an authoritarian like Xi Jinping, and acquiescing to what he's viewing as a demand from the United States?
So the Trump administration, it does appear that they know China. They know China pretty well. The Trump team, they do understand, who are the people in China who have the direct lines to Xi Jinping. So what they have requested is to talk to people who are really close to Xi, but that's not how China operates. They want to go through the established diplomatic channels. They want to go through the established ways of doing things. So this huge mismatch is really why we are, stuck right now, basically.
There's new reporting just coming into the Situation Room right now. We've learned that the Trump administration had private...
Yes, I'm going to talk about Mahmoud Khalil in a second. I know, chatters. It's in the fucking title. Goddamn, I know.
Negotiations with China, warning officials there against retaliatory tariffs. but those behind-the-scenes talks evidently did not work. CNN's chief national affairs correspondent Jeff Zeleny is over at the White House watching all of this for us. Jeff, what's the reaction over there after those warnings apparently fell on deaf ears?
Well, if they did fall on deaf ears, but it's just the latest example in the really day by day, the deepening trade war that is underway between the United States and China. Yes, we are learning that U.S. officials privately behind the scenes urged China to not retaliate. In fact, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has been saying that publicly all along, warning countries to not retaliate. Well, those warnings have fallen on deaf ears, particularly with China, as they raised their tariffs to 125%. The question...
You can't see the full title on mobile? Shut the fuck up, dumbass. It's the first statement in the title. Mahmoud Khalil deportation is the first, literally the first words in the title is Mahmoud Khalil. What do you mean you can't see it in the title? I put it in the fucking front of the title. You just don't know how to read. You're not literate. I'm also putting it on the fucking screen.
Now is which side is going to blink, if either. And Matt was just talking about consumer confidence. The prices are going to go up. There's no question about it. That's what the White House is bracing for. That's what the administration is bracing for. It's one of the big reasons the president had a dramatic pullback on a sweeping tariff plan just a couple days ago. And the market, of course, reacted very well in the moment. But in a couple days since, it certainly has not. The bond market also has not strengthening. So this is going to be one of the central questions here. But Wolf, we are also learning just inside the White House, the president, as he embarks on this 3-month pause on a sweeping tariff plan, there's competing views from his team of economic rivals, if you will. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, a long history on Wall Street, he is one of the people the president is listening to the most on this, of course. Kevin Hassett is as well. But Peter Navarro, the man right in the middle of the screen there, he is someone who has been very pro-supportive of these tariffs, and the president did not heed his advice this week. So as the president goes forward on this, as the consumer sentiment prices rise, which advisor is going to sort of win out on this? So there's no doubt the president, at the center of all these new trade negotiations, now has to negotiate with some 90 countries or so. So, Wolf, all of this is coming front and center here is the economy. That inflation report, the rising inflation, is one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest worries for this administration.
I do want to bring in CNN's Kylie Atwood. She has some new reporting on how President Trump in the U.S., the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, have interacted, and I guess the best way to say it, have not interacted, Kylie, since this trade war began. And you have some great new reporting on why that is.
Dana, just hours before these new retaliatory tariffs came out from China this morning, the Trump administration had privately warned Chinese officials of two things. First of all, not to retaliate, which we heard from Trump time and time again over the last few weeks, but also that China should be requesting a phone call between President Trump and President Xi. China has not done that so far. They've been telling China to do this for months now, according to a source familiar with that working level dialogue between the two sides. We know that Xi and Trump spoke before inauguration. They haven't had a conversation as this trade war has escalated. And senior White House officials tell Elena Trine that Trump is waiting for Xi to make the first move here. He thinks the onus is on the Chinese leader to do so. But when you talk to folks, there's a fundamental disagreement about how this could all come together. And that is one of the challenges, as there is this remaining question, an urgent question really, as to how they're going to create an off-ramp for this escalating trade war.
Here is where the trade war stands right now. 145 going up against 125. These are the tariffs between the world's two biggest economies.
And here's another number, 4,700 or about $400 per month. That is how much more money Yale's now estimating, the Yale Budget Lab, that President Trump's tariffs are going to cost average households each year. And with just hours left in trading, the Dow right now up. You're seeing that swing here going into the afternoon, up almost 650 points. But it was up and down there throughout earlier in the day. With us now, we have CNN business editor at large, Richard Quest. We have CNN chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto, as well. Richard, a key economic gauge, the consumer sentiment now at its second lowest level on record, going back to 1952. Why?
We shouldn't be surprised with all that's coming out and all the worries about tariffs. It's not just that, it's the complexity
complexity of everything else as well. The changes within the federal government, the worries about job losses, the worries about a slowing economy, higher inflation, and eventually you get these what's known as soft data. Surveys like the Michigan survey, consumer sentiment, and it's a really worrying number because at some point these sentiment surveys feed into hard data of real consumer spending, and we know this from history and precedent. That's what happens. So when we see a number as bad as this one, it is only a matter of time, unless anything else changes that would suddenly make people more cheerful. Look at that chart. I mean, just look at it. Unless people suddenly become more cheerful, why would this not translate into spending? You see, that consumer lab, the lab from Yale, that number of 4,700, that is providing you don't start substituting goods. In other words, pre-substitution, if we just continue as we are now. But of course, people will start to substitute. They will find other goods. And as the Christmas Tree Association said a moment or two ago, it's going to be very difficult to find substitution of many things that we currently get from China.
Yeah, you'll be surprised just how much we get exclusively from China. And Jim, I'm really curious to get your perspective on the White House's handling of this situation. Not so much the tariffs that have been announced, but this reporting that the White House, that officials have made clear to Beijing that they want Xi to ask for a call with Trump. Yeah. Trump hasn't reached out directly. What do you make of that approach?
And the White House saying they want Xi to reach out for it. Can you get any more high school in matters of state? It's ridiculous.
He's got to call me, Jim.
Yeah, and listen, what's interesting is, as I was reporting yesterday, the Chinese impression is that they are willing to at least negotiate, not necessarily on Donald Trump's terms, but to talk. But their impression is that the U.S. has not opened channels and not made an effort to open up channels to allow that. So now you have the U.S. president say, well, I'm not going to open those channels. China has to open them first. It's kind of ridiculous at the end of the day because you are playing with the interests of American consumers, Chinese consumers, et cetera. The other point I would make about China's reaction today in not quite meeting the U.S. tariffs, 145% U.S., China goes to 125. And in Xi's statement, he said,
I don't get it. Like, for all the oblivious America dick riders who think like America's really dominating right now, like what do they think is going on? Why is China not picking up the phone call? Why is China not picking up the phone and calling Donald Trump? Why has Donald Trump's attitude shifted over the course of this past week, where he went from China is panicking, they're so afraid, to why has China not called yet? Please call me. Also, why is the future of global trade and the economies of every single country at the whims of the selfish, narcissistic tendencies of a belligerent madman? It makes no sense. Another question here, of course, is for the media, because these guys aren't stupid. Okay, they're not stupid. They know they don't like Donald Trump for many different reasons, but they especially don't like Trump right now. They don't like Trump for doing this belligerent thing and potentially hurting the stock market, creating too much instability, right? So if they recognize that, why are they still trying to make sense of what Donald Trump is doing? Is it that we just have like one speed in mainstream media where they like have to say there's reason behind the belligerent actions of a person who collapsed the American stock market for fun? It doesn't make any sense. Why are these guys not going, hey, dude, this is crazy? Why are they engaging immediately in insane washing Donald Trump?
As we're going to 125 in response. That's as high as we're going because this is getting a little ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. And that's both a signal to say we're not going to get caught up in this tit for tat to the degree that the president is, but it's also an opening to say, okay, we're capping this for now, and that perhaps offers a way forward that we could begin talking about how to bring these down.
You've lived in China. Mm-hmm. You've covered China for some time now. As we're looking at this question of who's going to blink first, with two very different political systems, what is your gauge on this?
Well, different systems, listen, one's a democracy, one is not. One's a single-party state, very much not a democracy. But China does have politics, and Chinese leaders do not want to be seen, we were talking about this yesterday, I believe, do not want to be seen as capitulating to America. That is not...
Oh, it's just that they're pussy, like, they don't want to look like pussies, that's what it is. Well, if you set it up like this, then yeah, inevitably, when after the lesson, the hard lesson is taught to not America, because we're fucking too stupid and too belligerent and too hopped up on our own fumes of American imperial dominance to recognize that reality. But once the lesson to the European leaders have been taught, China, I think, will offer Trump an olive branch, a fig leaf, olive branch, whatever, something to make Trump feel like he got a W out of this. Because they also don't want complete market collapse, okay? And when that happens, these guys will go, okay, we hate Donald Trump, but he did bravely and boldly lead us down the pathway of American prosperity. That's what I suspect. We'll offer him a fig leaf. I don't fucking know what the term is. Shut up. An olive branch. A concession. That's it. These journals move to China and use it as a token to promote the same talking points they always have. Anyway, I guess fig leaf works in that situation too, because the emperor is devoid of clothes, you know? The emperor is naked. So I do think that both an olive branch and a fig leaf works in that regard. If we were to push that analogy to its limits, I think a fig leaf would even be better in that regard. Because basically what's going on is the emperor has no clothes. He's running around with his little baby dick out. Okay, and people are realizing that he has no clothes. No one wants to tell him that he has no clothes, and eventually China will be like, "Here's a fig leaf. You can put it on your baby dick." After everybody sees that he has no fucking clothes. Anyway, that's what I think is going to happen.
Not good politics for a Chinese leader. Long colonial history to go back into, we could talk for hours, but they don't want to be seen as kowtowing to the West here. So
yeah, no, totally. That's what it is. I mean, that's just marketing, okay? That's optics. It's also somewhat irrelevant in this process because J.D. Vance called China peasants. So I think that gave all of the opportunity to the Chinese government to hold strong.
Browbeating is not a great...
You got the right answer with the wrong formula amount?
Strategy. Yeah. And we've seen that in the past as well. Now, we should say Donald Trump mixes in with the tariff browbeating some comments about how good a friend he is with Xi. But we'll see if the door has been closed for now or if there's a little bit of an opening and perhaps they start opening those channels.
Richard, it's interesting to explore the power that the EU has now because they can tip the scales in terms of how impactful these tariffs will be for either nation, depending on where negotiations land.
So you've got the Spanish Prime Minister in Beijing. You've got the EU basically saying, well, we're going to start looking at other markets. I think this will most certainly give a huge boost to China-EU relations to try and complete some form of trade agreement, because everybody is now wanting to circumnavigate the United States. Now, you can't up to a point. There are certain things, there are certain inalienable bonds of trade between the EU and the US. That doesn't mean to say you can't reduce it, your reliance. And just as much as the US is now saying, we want to reduce our reliance on China, we want to make sure we are no longer strategically dependent. The EU absolutely is saying, is there a deal to be done with Brazil and Mercosur? Is there a deal to be done with ASEAN, a stronger one? Jim, can I just ask Jim, do you think, sorry guys, but do you think that the Xi statement is actually a sort of not a white flag, but just a sort of an olive branch that both sides can now take to move forward?
I think it has two sides to it. One, it's a bit of a message to the U.S. to say, this is silly. This is getting silly. We're not going to play this game of chicken. But Xi Jinping Also, by not going right up to the level of U.S. tariffs, I think one can look at that as a small opening for discussions. Both of them want to talk. Now the question is, I suppose, who picks up the phone first? That's where we are.
You see, Boris, Brianna, that's what happens when you get two anchors who are also your guests. We'll just hijack.
All right, now to a Fox News alert.
All right, let's hear what the let's see what the piglets are saying to learn what's not actually happening in this process, but it's still informative because this is what a big chunk of the country will repeat. Now that I've told you what is going on and what I suspect will happen and what the truth is, let's talk about how these guys are covering the same exact issue.
Or tensions, I should say. It's trade tensions escalating overnight as Beijing announces a 125% tariff on U.S. imports. That's up from 84%. After the White House says tariffs on China are now at 145%.
So meanwhile, President Trump says he's very close to his first deal.
If you aren't able to reach the deals that you want to see at the end of the 90 days, will you put those higher tariffs in place, or will you extend?
Well, that's what would happen. I mean, if we can't make the deal that we want to make, or we have to make, or that's good for both parties, it's got to be good for both parties. And then we go back to where we were.
Go back to the numbers that you announced last week.
I think so.
Wouldn't extend the pause.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens.
Well, here to explain what those next 90 days will be like is U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Jameson, first off, your take on what we woke up to today, upping the retaliatory tariffs on America to over 100%. Your reaction?
Well, good morning. I would say that the Chinese reaction this morning is not terribly surprising, but certainly unfortunate. No one else has retaliated against these reciprocal tariffs yet. China got out ahead and decided to do it, and that's why they're in a different category than the rest at this point.
Jameson, I know you've already talked to some countries and you're planning on talking to some today. Can you tell our audience which ones?
Certainly. In fact, right after I'm done with this TV spot, I'm going to be speaking with my counterpart in Israel. Over the last 2 days, I had a long discussion with the Vietnamese. We're speaking with the Taiwanese later today as well. I have a full dance card.
Yeah. So I guess, Representative, a lot of questions, the big question on Americans' mind, they're on board when it comes to knowing that China is a threat and they steal a lot of stuff from us. Is there a plan to make up the difference for some of those businesses that are going to be hit hard by this trade war?
Well, certainly. And part of the reason we're doing negotiations is to achieve more fair and balanced and reciprocal trade with other nations. And part of this means opening up their export markets. As we all know, there have been so many barriers to U.S. products in foreign markets for many years, whether it's tariffs or non-tariff barriers or other things like that. And so as we're meeting with these countries every day, we're talking about ways where we can have more U.S. exports and give our producers alternative markets to China in addition to China.
All right, so when we look at China, tell me if these numbers line up with your numbers. We get 73% of our smartphones, 78% of our laptops, 87% of our video game consoles, 77% of our toys from China. If those numbers are correct, the marketplace is going to get severely hit by these tariffs.
So I understand that we do import a lot from China, and that actually, to me, underscores the urgency of the situation. We've become so dependent on this. That being said, many of our large companies dealing in hardware and consumer electronics have been diversifying over the past few years to Vietnam, to India, to Mexico, to Korea, to elsewhere. And those are the kind of trends we need to see to help diversify that production so that can help out American consumers and American companies.
But in the meantime, they say it's going to cost the American household $4,800. What do you say to those households?
Yeah, what do you say?
Well, first of all, I would say with respect to those projections, a lot of those are Wall Street analysts who have a lot to lose themselves. In the first term, we put a lot of tariffs on China, and we saw similar predictions. Those ended up being wrong. Inflation went down. I think the economic fundamentals of our country are still very, very good. And while there may be an adjustment, I think we're going to be on a good path, and I don't think we're going to see that level of increase in household expenses.
Yeah, I know a lot of countries are still at 10%. So many of those products maybe we can buy from other countries. What do the next 90 days look like?
Sure, I'm happy to give you some detail on this. So my office, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, I have hundreds of people They're split up according to regional areas, and they're working around the clock with their counterparts at the staff level. And there are pieces of paper going back and forth as countries come in and make suggestions about what they can do to have more reciprocal trade with with us. And we're looking at those, we're reviewing those, we're communicating with them and giving them ideas so we can get to a point where the president can close these deals. He can negotiate, and if there's a deal that's good, he can consider taking it, and if not, then he'll have the tariff. But that's what we're doing over the next 90 days. We've been doing it for weeks, and we're doing it today, and we'll just keep doing it.
Mr. Representative, the president has said, keep calm, don't get yippy. You seem like a calm guy yourself, but what do you tell the American people that are on your side, on the president's side, but they are a little scared because they see everything in their house and they look at the label and it says made in China?
Yes, there's a story from a couple of years ago. One of my kids one day looked at me and said, "Dad, why does everything say made in China? They must be so busy over there." And they're exactly right. But again, this has been a bipartisan.
If China doesn't back down, how fucked is the U.S.? Imaginably fucked. He just described to you all of the products that are made in China and did not tell you how that is going to how all of that trade is going to be rerouted. Like there's no alternative. There is no plan. There is no alternative. There is no plan. It is insane. It is an insane move. Got me the world and the rest was made in China. It's
an
true.
Approach for the past almost 8 years at this point that we need to diversify from China and be able to source from other countries. And so I'm obviously sensitive to the needs of households and what we're seeing. But we've been.
Yeah, the only alternative is rerouting trade to secondary markets. Rerouting trade to secondary markets, which, guess what, is still going to make it more expensive. It's not going to be 125% more expensive, but it will still be, especially on top of the tariffs, there's additional logistics involved in this. Like it will make it, on top of the 10% global tariffs, it will literally be, it will take more time and it will be more costly on top of that. So you're still looking at a shit ton of inflation for no discernible reason.
Put in a position and a point of emergency, frankly, where if we can only maintain our standard of living by being dependent on China, who is a strategic adversary, that's a very dangerous position to be in. And so we need to accelerate this.
What did you learn from the phase one deal last time, which they didn't keep to, and it wasn't enforced? Does that make you worry about cutting any deal with China in the long run?
Well, my sense is that the Chinese are pragmatic. I learned to have a deep respect for them. They're very serious. They understand power and realpolitik in the international arena. When we did the phase one deal in the first couple of years, where the Trump administration was still there, we actually were able to enforce it. They bought more ag products from us in 2020 and then even 2021 than they had done in history. So it is a matter of enforcement. And I think if there's mutual understanding, mutual respect, and a real agreement, you can actually move the ball forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong at all. The difference in this circumstance is that Trump is behaving in an even more belligerent manner in his second term, as opposed to his first term. It was a costly initiative but it was at least like directed at certain sectors, and therefore you could at least like subsidize those sectors and try to make up for the loss of profit, make up for the loss of revenue. In this circumstance, it's impossible for America to make up for that. Do you see what I'm saying? They have created a new trade regime that makes it impossible for anyone to contend with. But I think I'll add one more thing. I'll add one more reason why I think China is like holding out. Because the more they hold out, the more instability happens, the more Trump loses out on his confidence to maintain this trade regime, this embargo, basically. So I think it lowers the stakes for China when they do come back and offer an olive branch. But this is why I suspect that China will offer an olive branch eventually.
Thank you so much for coming on this morning.
I don't think they're interested in destroying America and therefore destroying global trade across the board and just like rewriting global trade in general, resetting, what do you call it? Basically doing a great reset, allowing Trump to hit the great reset button, ironically enough, because it's Trump doing this. It's not China.
You've had a busy week.
Right. Just exit question. Can you get 70 deals done in 90 days?
I think we can get enough deals done to the president so he can be comfortable that we're moving the ball forward, making trade more.
Dude, even he's admitting it. It's just like, this is straight up about, this is about making the president feel good, dude. That's insane. That's insane. It has nothing to do with like fixing trade deficits or anything. It's just at this stage, it's straight up, we're at the mercy of a madman.
Reciprocal and pushing forward American prosperity.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative.
China escalating the ongoing trade war with the U.S.
Overnight, Beijing announcing a 125% tariff on U.S. imports. This is up from 84% duty that China announced on Wednesday.
So this has the White House clarified yesterday that the 20% fentanyl tariff will remain in effect, bringing the total tariff on China to 145%.
Yeah, we did some bad math early, but now this is the total.
China's finance ministry responding, saying, quote, even if the U.S. continues to impose higher tariffs, it will no longer make economic sense and will become a joke in the history of world economy.
All right, President Xi also saying today his country is not afraid. Their new 125% tariff rate on U.S. Goods kicks in tomorrow. And here we go. So no one's backing off.
No.
But the thing that obviously it's going to affect us. Got it. But when you realize how much China is hurting internally, their marketing, their housing market has collapsed. The stimulus money that they put in has not been effective. They have a youth unemployment rate where kids are going from college and they just don't want to work, not opportunities available, to the point where they're going back to the colleges saying, if your students, your graduates don't get jobs, we're coming after you. That's how desperate they are. And most of what they need now, since they're great at producing things, but they need us to consume their things. And if the prices become too high, America naturally will start giving the Heisman to Chinese goods.
I think this has become the national security issue of our time as well, Brian. They hack us like crazy. They steal like crazy. They knock off our products all the time. And you really can't compete at the end of the day with slave labor. We outlawed in this country for a reason, and now we essentially buy the products from a different country that does the same thing.
Right. We get a lot of computers, a lot of phones, a lot of toys from China. But the president says he's optimistic. This was good news. He said we're very close to doing one of these trade deals. Listen.
So how close are you to the first country coming to actually make a deal with the United States over tariffs? Is it days, months?
Well, I think it's very close, but, you know, we have to have a deal that we like. We don't want a deal that's...
Not only do we still have slave labor in our prison system and it's legal, we also literally just signed a new deal with a slave labor colony in El Salvador to ship a bunch of people without any evidence of their criminal behavior whatsoever to said slave labor colony. It's fucking crazy.
It's going to be a bad deal, or I could make every deal in one day if I wanted to. I could do this all in one day. I could just say, here's what we'll do. And
yeah, this is, I already know what this is. Okay. I know what he's going to say. Tim Apple here is going to say people misunderstand something about China. Even if China had wage parity with the United States of America, where the wage was the exact same for the labor, I would still manufacture my products in China because they have a runway, they have industrial runway, they have infrastructure. Their industry is far more advanced than the United States of America. This is a truth. I have heard Tim Apple say this before, and it is correct. A lot of people still operate with the old hat mentality. China has both the skill, the skilled labor force, and the education, and the infrastructure to handle all of the demand necessary for a company like Apple. America does not. The reason why Tim Apple would continue working with China is because of that reality. What people don't understand, or what people still think, is that China makes cheap commodities, cheap goods. They don't understand that the very same factory that will give you a $1 t-shirt is also capable of giving you a $200 t-shirt. The very same factory that can give you Temu is also capable of manufacturing iPhones. This is what Americans don't understand. They think everything cheap is made in China. It's just cheap Chinese goods. Affordable doesn't mean that the quality of the product is bad. In China, now, in the exact same factory, you can get the highest level of quality good if you choose to pay for it, or the lowest level of quality good if you choose to pay less for it. It's not fucking the early 2000s at this point. It's not the 90s at this point.
About China, and let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor costs. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. The reason is because of the skill, the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is. Like the products we do require really advanced tooling, and the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. You know, in the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep, very, very deep here. There's a confusion about China. And let me at least give you my...
Yeah, that took, for the record, that took decades to build. Okay, that was our design, mind you, but that took decades to build. It's an important lesson to learn. If it took China decades to build, even though they were nowhere near as wealthy as the United States of America at the time, how long would it take for us to build without a command economy, with no free education? Think about that. Nobody thinks about how long it takes to build a factory and hire the skilled labor necessary to fill the factory floor. It's just thoughts and prayers, I guess. Everything in America is built around thoughts and prayers. We have the money, except the government never uses that money in that direction because of the private-public partnership that we have designed that does not work at the behest of citizens or the behest of improving the material conditions of the working class, but instead works at the behest of profit. So we just don't have it. Real question, if you're such a fan of China, why do you choose to live in the U.S.? Oh, right, the whole freedom to be a millionaire by spreading propaganda thing you do well. I mean, this propaganda that I'm spreading about China, I could just as easily do in China. I'm pretty sure, you know. There are certain things I would not be allowed to say. That much is clear. Even though, as it stands, a lot of the things I'm saying here in the United States of America are becoming illegal right now in this very moment. Mahmoud Khalil comes to mind. Very confusing to me that someone who is a regular layman living in the United States of America is yelling at a person like me to be like, why don't you go back? Why don't you go to China to say this shit, dumbass? And it's like, I could do that, but I care about people here. I see the potential that America has. I want America to be better. I want America to do right by every single person in this chat, every single person in the United States of America, including dumb fucks like you, as a matter of fact, regardless of your stupid opinions. That's what I'm fighting for. Whether you recognize it or not doesn't matter. I already covered this. Supreme Court partially allows lower court. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that as well. Shamath. All right, let's continue with this for now.
I was saying to the people before, to Scott, mostly to Scott and Howard, and some of the other people that work with us on the negotiations.
You wouldn't extend the pause?
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens at that time.
And they're saying a lot of things. They're coming after it. Their foreign minister, the Chinese foreign minister, says the U.S. is in defiance of global criticism, pitching itself against the rest of the world. Intimidation, threats, and blackmail are not the right way to engage China. Now, people have said that President Xi has come to power, held power, consolidated power, because he's known as a tough guy.
Right.
So that's his whole persona. I know it comes down to schoolyard politics, and we usually use that, keep that in the Middle East, right. But we're seeing that now. So if you want to keep your population in check, you make him think that you're in control, what he says goes, and you're going to stand up to the behemoth, which is the U.S., which makes me think they're not going to take a step back, because that is their persona right now around the globe.
But people are going to suffer. And I love the way that the president talks about this. He always says, look, I got to be tough with China. I have to, but me and the president are friends. He's a tough negotiator. I got to do what's best for my people. Mm-hmm. He's going to try to do what's best for his people. But all I want is fairness. I don't want to get into a war with China. Mm-hmm. I just want what's fair to the
This is also a correct take. What is funny is that neither China or you want the U.S. to lose, but the U.S. keeps trying to kill itself. It is in China's best interest not to collapse the global order, the global economy. China is doing all right in the current order of business. America, on the other hand, is like, I will fucking nuke the entire planet. I'm on the button. My finger's on the trigger. I will nuke the entire planet. It's crazy. And the irony here is that chatters like that one will be the ones who lose out even more than someone like myself in this process. Everybody wants to avoid this, except for seemingly Trump and his supporters. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. Like, Trump supporters are going to get fucked over by this, and they're just championing this death and destruction for seemingly no reason other than to soothe the narcissism of a madman.
United States, and what's fair for China as well.
Right. I don't think most Americans knew the deficit was so big between the two countries, and that's what he's saying. We're going to stop paying y'all so much money until you start paying us just as much. We have Jameson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative. You've seen him on TV. Guest. Yeah, he's big. He's going to be on at 7:30. He's the one that's been in front of the Senate and the House talking about all this.
Very smart.
And the cabinet met yesterday, and the cabinet members started to share their latest developments. It goes hand in hand with what you saw yesterday at the diner. Everyone was saying, I love that President Trump's doing this and this and this. And if you don't remember everything that he's done over the last 100+ days.
Yeah, this is also an interesting point. They keep talking about how the Chinese people are suffering and neglect to recognize how this will very negatively impact Americans. It's wild. Yeah. These aren't people who care about, like, Chinese people and their prosperity. So why is it that they consistently talk about the suffering of the Chinese in this process and not the suffering of Americans? They're Americans. They've never actually cared about Chinese people and their well-being. So important to note, important to consider why they just don't talk about, why they don't talk about how Americans will suffer in this process. Because, like, aside from Brian Kilmeade, who we know was in the tank for Ron DeSantis, I rarely ever hear any Fox News anchor talk about what this will do to fucking costs. CNN is interviewing a small business owner virtually every night. They're not doing more in terms of, like, workers that will inevitably be laid off. I think they should be covering that aspect of it. I think they should be covering the aspect of consumer confidence and what that will do to the working poor. They should be interviewing, like, regular people, doing a man on the street to be like, what do you think is going to happen when this thing that you consume, okay, is going to be 10 times more costly now? Like, how does that make you feel?
Days. Here you go.
Within the next 24 hours, you're going to be seeing another huge arrest on a Tesla dealership, President. And that person will be looking at least 20 years in prison with no negotiations.
For the second month in a row, you have broken the record in the history of the nation for the lowest number of encounters at the border.
We anticipate savings in FY26 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion. And I mean, and some of it is
cope, lies, awesome,
just absurd. Like, people getting unemployment insurance who haven't been born yet.
I've had over 100 people working around the clock to scan the paper around RFK, Senator Robert F. Kennedy's assassination, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination.
By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
That's incredible. I said
Think about
100
that
days.
last line.
It'll be
What?
100 days on April 29th. That last line, we're going to figure out by September what has caused this autism epidemic. We'll be able to know or tell America by then.
Well, I mean, that's huge promises. No backing off that deadline. One thing is, they did update us. This is what President Trump wants to do. It's your government. I'm going to let you see what's happening. It went on for over an hour. There's no better programming in the country than when President Trump gets his cabinet members together or when he has these meetings, whether it's gun control or anything else. Bring the cameras in. You'll see it in real time. You bring the governors in. Leave the cameras on. Let the governors ask me questions. Same thing with
Right,
mayors.
the transparency in this administration is just unmatched. I mean, he wants the American public to see everything. And this is not a ceremonial cabinet. They're working, and they're telling the American people what they're doing. You can criticize them all day. You may not like them personally, whatever the Democrats want.
I can't deal with this. This is just so stupid.
China.
Trump's top trade advisor tells Mr. Xi to pick up the phone, come to the table. Okay, we're going to do Mahmoud Khalil now, and then I'll get back to the Xi stuff in a second, okay? Because I think it's time to talk about it. So earlier today, I mean, I knew that the decision was going to come down today from the Louisiana judge who demanded earlier this week that the American government at least offer any evidence as to why Mahmoud Khalil is deportable. She even went as far as to say that if there's no evidence on my table as to why Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University student who is a green card recipient, whose wife is an American citizen, who's 8 months pregnant, why Mahmoud Khalil is deportable, if the government doesn't give any details as to why, any evidence as to why he can be deported from this country, she's going to drop the case. But it turns out that it doesn't take much. It didn't take much for this judge to actually find evidence because the American government sent a memo. I read the memo yesterday. The memo actually had very little details and exclusively featured vague generalizations. No evidence whatsoever, no hard evidence whatsoever as to why a person's green card can be revoked other than the feelings of the State Department. Today, the Louisiana judge made a decision that Mahmoud Khalil is indeed deportable.
With breaking news, a few moments ago, a U.S. immigration judge has ruled that the Trump administration's deportation case against pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil can move forward. Well, we can speak with Shihab Bretanzi, who is live for us outside the Immigration Detention Center in Gina, Louisiana. Now, this has just happened, Shihab. So the judge has ruled that the deportation case can go ahead.
Mahmoud Khalil is removable, in the opinion of the judge. He said that the letter that the Secretary of State...
Due process is dead today officially? No. I want you to understand the wrongdoings that took place today and how important of a boundary this was that the Louisiana judge basically broke. But there's obviously still an opportunity to contest this deportation. Okay? There is still a bunch of things that are taking place, and I'll describe it to you in a second. Let's just continue.
To the court, detailing the reasons for the removal were reasonable. The letter Secretary of State explaining the reason is reasonable. The DHS, so the Department of Homeland Security, has met its burden, she said. However, Khalil is open to a relief application on April the 23rd, and there was a discussion of whether he be deported to Syria or Algeria. So these are the notes, the little clips that we have. No electronic.
It's also a sign of how insane the times have gotten that I had a sigh of relief for a brief moment that he could be deportable to Syria or Algeria as opposed to El Salvador. That's how fucked the situation is, that the American government, by the way, still could technically decide to deport him to CCOT instead. Like, think about how insane that is. Think about how much the needle of cruelty has moved in that direction, where when I heard that he was deportable to Algeria or Syria, I thought, well, at least it's not El Salvador, where seemingly there's no mechanism of extracting someone after wrongdoing has been found by the administration. This is how horrifying America has become. And the saddest part of this aside from the sheer cruelty, is the fact that many Americans are completely oblivious to it, and those who are familiar with the matter, unironically, are in favor of it. And yes, you aren't wrong. Mahmoud's case is supposed to be heard in New Jersey. Okay, here, I'll just describe it. Here is Steve Vladeck. He says, before folks overreact to the headlines about the judge's ruling in the Khalil case, please note that 1, it was an immigration judge, not a federal district court, and 2, the immigration judge had no power to consider Khalil's constitutional objections. This particular decision was fait accompli. Khalil can still raise his constitutional arguments both in his habeas petition, still pending in a federal court in New Jersey, and once he is able to challenge the immigration judge's ruling in the Fifth Circuit. It sucks that he can't raise them before the IJ, the immigration judge, but that's unfortunately not unusual. So the fait accompli. Sorry. What's the evidence the judge deemed convincing, though? It was, and I'm not even joking when I say this, it was a fucking memo that basically said, Mahmoud, oh my God. Fiona! Fuck. Jesus Christ, dude. This dog is going crazy. I don't know what is happening. Immigration judge is still an agency decision, not an actual Article 3 court decision. Can still appeal for due process. Immigration judges are a fucking lottery system. Some of them are just on crack. Anyways,
devices were allowed in the courtroom. Khalil, we're told, was calm throughout the proceedings, and he did address the court. He said nothing is more important than due process and fundamental fairness. Neither of these principles were present. This is why the Trump administration sent me to this court thousands of miles from my family. So, this is all hinging on a letter that the Secretary of State, Mark.
Does anyone have the memo? We looked at it yesterday. Does anyone have the memo? A 2-page letter that admits Khalil's conduct is not unlawful, but says his beliefs undermine core American interests. Yeah. Here. There is the actual. Someone had a screen grab of the actual memo that they sent. You were supposed to explain what the evidence was in court. Yeah. We looked at it yesterday. Here. It's ridiculous. The memo, signed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, states that while Khalil's activities were otherwise lawful, his presence would undermine U.S. policy to combat anti-Semitism around the world and in the United States, in addition to the efforts to protect Jewish students from harassment and violence in the United States. Condoning anti-Semitic conduct and disruptive protests in the United States would severely undermine that significant foreign policy objective. That's it. That's literally it. I am writing to inform you that upon notification from the Department of Homeland Security investigations on March 7th, I've determined that this redacted person and Mahmoud Khalil, both U.S. lawful permanent residents, are deportable aliens under INA Section 237. I understand that ICE now intends to initiate removal charges against them based on assurances from DHS, ICE, and HSI. Under INA Section 237, an alien is deportable from the United States if the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe that the alien's presence or activities in the United States would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. For cases in which the basis for this determination is the alien's past, current, or expected beliefs, statements, or associations that are otherwise lawful, the Secretary of State must personally determine that the alien's presence or activities would compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy asset. It's just vibes. They also openly recognize that this person is otherwise a lawful, like there is no misconduct. Okay? He has engaged in an otherwise lawful manner, but the opinion of the Secretary of State is that he is dangerous and therefore deportable. Do you understand how insane that is? Just thought crimes. So Judge Jamie Commons had ordered the U.S. government to produce evidence against Mahmoud Khalil ahead of a hearing on Friday to decide whether the government can continue detaining him during the immigration proceedings. Despite earlier claims by DHS spokesperson Trisha McClellan said that Khalil's activities were aligned to Hamas, the government has not provided any evidence to support this accusation and has made no reference to the group in its most recent filing. Khalil's attorneys, Mark Vanderhoot and Johnny Sinotis, stated, after a month of hiding the ball since Mahmoud's late-night unjust arrest in New York and taking him away to a remote detention center in Louisiana, immigration authorities have finally admitted that they have no case whatsoever against him. There's not a single shred of proof that Mahmoud's presence in America posed any threat, the attorneys added in their statement. There's also another thing that they had sent. There was a memo that was sent to the judge's office yesterday, and the memo basically said that Mahmoud and this other person were involved in protests. That's it. And the protests were scary for Jewish students. That's it. That was the evidence in the memo here. Information provided, like, I'm not even joking. Like, that is literally the memo. Information provided by the DHS, ICE, HSI regarding the participation and roles of Redacted and Khalil in anti-Semitic protests and disruptive activities which fosters a hostile environment for Jewish students in the United States. My determination is based on citations for unlawful activity during these protests. The public actions and continued presence of Redacted and Khalil in the United States undermine U.S. policy to combat anti-Semitism around the world. They're saying that these people are deportable because, not that they like, oh, that's only for the redacted person, not Khalil. Oh, I misunderstood. No, it says and Khalil. No, this is for both of them. That's only for the redacted person, by the way, not Khalil. The citations for unlawful activity don't even apply to Khalil. No, it says it says for both of them. They're stating no. You have to understand something. They're saying that the protests had unlawful activity. They do not say what that unlawful activity is. There's no evidence for said unlawful activity. And also beyond that, there's no direct evidence for either the redacted person or Mahmoud Khalil engaging in the unlawful activity. They're simply saying that the determination is alleged unlawful activity that they vaguely tie back to these two people. You're missing my point. I agree, but I'm saying this letter specifically doesn't implicate Khalil in unlawful activity. It only implicates them in the protests themselves. Yes. You're misunderstanding. The blurred area chat is confusing. Seems like a number of citations in the charge they're accusing him of. No. The point I'm making here is that even for the redacted person, there is no evidence for unlawful activity directly. There might be, but there's none here. It's just unlawful activity exists, okay? There's no evidence for that either. But let's say there is unlawful activity that has taken place in these protests. That's not too difficult to determine. You can say someone kicked over a trash can, right? You can say someone kicked over a trash can. That's unlawful activity. That's causing a disturbance, whatever. They didn't even do that. And even if they were to do that, they did not point it directly at either of these people. They did not say Mahmoud Khalil kicked over a trash can or the redacted person kicked over a trash can. They're simply saying trash cans were kicked over. They're not even saying that, but let's say that they did say that, okay? That they are somehow responsible for it. This is not how this works. You have to at least develop a pattern. You have to, at the very least, develop a pattern of behavior or show proof that that this isn't just guilt by proximity or guilt by association, but a cause and effect, a causal factor and an effect of how Khalil was determined to get someone else to kick that trash can. There is no crime that has been committed, which is precisely the reason why, especially for something that is as crazy as like revoking the green card of a otherwise documented non-citizen. Okay, not even a non-citizen at that point. It's like the final stage of becoming a full-blown naturalized U.S. citizen. You have a green card. The fact that they don't even show any evidence whatsoever, let alone evidence that it would be consistent with something eligible for deportation, is insane. My determination for a redacted person is also based on unknown citations for unlawful activity during these protests. What I'm saying is, if they believe this applied to Khalil as well, they would have said as much, but they specifically left Khalil out of this particular statement. Is also based on citations. Oh, okay. But yeah, all right. This is a separate sentence. You're right. The public actions and continued presence of redacted and Khalil in the United States undermine U.S. policy. Okay, you're right. I was wrong. Megaphonics is right. I was wrong. They're not even making it. They're not even making a statement for both the redacted person and Khalil based on citations for unlawful activity in these protests. But they are making a determination for the redacted person for citations for unlawful activity during these protests. Even then, though, there is no evidence for unlawful activity, and this leaves it up to determine. This is so vague in and of itself. This is so unimaginably vague in and of itself to say that there was unlawful activity that took place in these protests, and this person may have contributed to it. Citations or a green card holder can get deported for a speeding ticket. Under normal circumstances, of course not. In this situation, they are technically, for Mahmoud Khalil specifically, they're saying you don't even need to do anything unlawful. This right here is the State Department stating that the revocation of someone's green card can be done over nothing unlawful at all, but simply the vibes of the State Department. Because I said so. And they can't even find anything to associate him with anyway. Not even littering. They're not even choosing. Even if they could find, a charge for jaywalking, they're not even looking for it. Because the determination being based on those grounds alone is the initiative. I suspect that they got locked into this. Because I suspect that they got locked into this because they were operating with really bad info. Like, they just thought that he was, as they said initially, a person on a student visa, where it's still ridiculous. It's still unacceptable to do this. But the revocation of a student visa in comparison to a green card is going to be somewhat of a lower standard, right? Even though they shouldn't be able to do this for someone, if Mahmoud Khalil was on a student visa, they still should not have been able to do this. But the very fact that he's also a green card holder, married to an American citizen who's, pregnant, 8 months pregnant, like, this is a very, very sympathetic figure. And they ran with it regardless because they were just locked in. They didn't just go, all right, we'll burn this case and then we'll move on to the next one where we can make a more compelling argument as to why this person should be deported. Because eventually, their goal was to do this anyway. And I think eventually their goal is not just to stay on deportations for green card holders for the crime of hurting Israel's feelings. I think their goal is to denaturalize citizens as well. That's the next step. If you were naturalized in the last 5 years, they're going to try and denaturalize you and then move on. And then what's that sound? It's my dad. He's making food for me, okay? Sorry. I know there's a noise in the background. Press for evidence against Mahmoud Khalil. Government cites its power to deport people for beliefs. And they also stated that. They also stated that, like, illegal ideas that cross the border are offenses. And then they deleted it after everyone fucking yelled at them and made fun of them. Ross Barkin says, I'm genuinely curious if I'm allowed to now write essays and opinion pieces critical of the Israeli government, or Marco Rubio will try to find a way to arrest or remove me from the U.S. I am a citizen. I doubt this happens, but that's where we are now. The Bush war and terror violated civil liberties in terrible ways, but through the insanity, there was a dark logic. 9/11 happened, and America had to be protected. Trump deporting pro-Palestinian protesters has no logic. It's just insidious and a violation of the First Amendment. The reality of the matter is that without the post 9/11 destruction of American civil liberties, Donald Trump would not be able to do this. Without the Bush administration not rewriting the rules and returning to a sense of normalcy, we would not be at the stage where Donald Trump can do this. Same goes for Joe Biden as well. So all of the previous administrations played a role in where we got. I think it'll get worse if you listen to them talk about it. They feel like they're getting rid of them and making someone else problem. If you're a citizen, who would stand against Trump? You're America's problem. Yes, this is fascism through and through. And I'm trying to explain this to Americans who don't comprehend it because they think, like, even in their minds, they go, well, I'm white, or white people won't get harmed in this process. No, they will. Anyone and everyone that speaks out against this administration will eventually be in the crosshairs. Wake the fuck up. The most insane part of this that I suspect is the insidious nature of Trump's agenda is not obviously because they care about anti-Semitism. Let's be fucking real. Donald Trump dined with Nick Fuentes, okay, and Kanye West. Donald Trump has rabid anti-Semites in the administration. They do not care about anti-Semitism, okay? But they recognize that they want to undermine the First Amendment. And the most effective way of eroding constitutional protections for free speech, free association, free assembly, free press is by tackling an issue that actually does have institutional muscle. Anti-Semitism is, as it stands, not only socially unacceptable, but institutionally not permissible either. For the time being, that is surely changing. But for the time being, there are a lot of Jewish advocacy groups and a lot of pro-Israeli advocacy groups that maintain themselves as Jewish advocacy groups that have a lot of institutional muscle to flex. And for that reason, there's a lot of appetite for some of these advocacy groups to engage in these kinds of actions. So the Trump administration is simply using anti-Semitism, which is not even real anti-Semitism, but instead anti-Israel sentiment, by the way. Okay? They're using anti-Israel sentiment as a starting point, as a way to open the door for whatever the fuck they want to prosecute down the line. Because once constitutional protections are undermined, once the First Amendment is gone, they can do that to anyone and everyone, especially when it's paired up with the reality that due process is gone. Once due process for non-citizens is gone, well, you don't have due process. How are we going to figure out if you are a citizen or not to begin with? Eric Prince is lobbying Trump on a plan to vastly expand the U.S. operations to detain migrants in El Salvador's notorious CCOP prison, including relocating thousands currently held in the United States and designating a part of the jail as U.S. territory. The irony here, of course, is that this is being done by the free speech president, you know, under the banner of free speech. The most egregious violation of the First Amendment in American history. And here it is. Immigration judge finds that Columbia University activist Mahmoud Khalil can be deported as a national security risk. An immigration judge in Louisiana found Friday during a hearing over the legality of deporting the activists who participated in the pro-Palestinian demonstrations. The government's contention that Khalil's presence in the United States posed a potentially serious foreign policy consequences was enough to satisfy the requirement for his deportation. Immigration judge Jamie E. Coleman said at the conclusion of a hearing in Jena. Coleman said that the government had established by clear and convincing evidence that he is removable. They did not, by the way. This is the judge's own personal decision. They very clearly did not. I showed you the evidence that they had, which directly contradicts what this person is saying. They openly admit that this person did not engage in any sort of unlawful misconduct, but simply was at the whims, at the mercy of the Secretary of State that singled him out. Lawyers for Khalil said they plan to keep fighting. The judge gave them until April 23rd to seek a waiver. Meanwhile, a federal judge in New Jersey temporarily barred Khalil's deportation. Addressing the judge at the end of the hearing, Khalil mentioned that she said at a hearing earlier in the week that there's nothing more important to this court than due process rights and fundamental fairness. Clearly, what we witnessed today, neither of these principles were present today or in this whole process, he added. His lawyer, Mark Vander Hout, also criticized the hearing's fairness. Today, we saw our worst fears play out. Mahmoud was subject to a charade of due process, a flagrant violation of his rights in a fair hearing, and a weaponization of immigration law to suppress dissent. Khalil, a legal U.S. resident, was detained by federal immigration agents on March 8th in the lobby of his university-owned apartment, the first arrest under President Donald Trump's promised crackdown on students who joined campus protests against the war in Gaza. Within a day, he was flown across the country and taken to an immigration detention center in Jena, thousands of miles from his attorneys and wife, a U.S. citizen who is due to give birth soon. Khalil's lawyers have challenged the legality of his detention, saying the Trump administration is trying to crack down on free speech protected by the U.S. Constitution. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has cited a rarely used statute to justify Khalil's deportation, which gives him the power to deport those who pose potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. At Friday's hearing, Vander Hout told the judge that the government's submissions to court to prove to attempt to deport his client has nothing to do with foreign policy. Earlier this week, Coleman challenged the government to share proof that Khalil should be expelled from the country for his role in campus protests against Israel and the war in Gaza. She said if evidence does not support his removal, she would terminate the case on Friday. On Friday, Justice Department attorneys said in papers filed in federal court in Newark, New Jersey, that Coleman would not have the authority to immediately free Khalil. They said an immigration judge could determine if Khalil is subject to deportation, then conduct a bail hearing afterwards if it's found that he is not. Khalil isn't accused of breaking any laws during the protests at Columbia. Yeah, clear and convincing evidence is just below reasonable doubt and just above preponderance of evidence, 51% proven. What you showed doesn't even rise to preponderance, not even close. Exactly. But a fucking rabid, sociopathic, bloodthirsty judge can just decide, again, to make that claim, to say, no, this is enough evidence for me. Bad vibes is enough evidence for me. I guess the cowardly way out of that assessment would be to say, well, I am in no position to determine whether or not the Marco Rubio assessment is wrong. I guess that's the legal defense for this judge, to say, well, that's the Secretary of State. The law is the law. I cannot make an additional determination and be the precedent-setting judge here that potentially plays a role in undermining the power of the State Department. But I don't even think that they're thinking about it like that. I think that they just were, this was specifically sent to this judge for the reasons that we have determined already, that she would inevitably do this. The government, however, has said non-citizens who participate in such demonstrations should be expelled from the country for expressing views that the administration considers to be anti-Semitic or pro-Hamas, referring to the Palestinian militant group that attacked Israel October 7th. Khalil, a 30-year-old international affairs graduate student, had served as a negotiator and a spokesperson for student activists at Columbia University who took over campus lawn last spring to protest Israel's military campaign in Gaza. The university brought police in to dismantle the encampment after a small group of protesters seized an administration building. Khalil is not accused of participating in the building occupation and wasn't among the people arrested in connection with the demonstrations. But images of his maskless face at protests, along with his willingness to share his name with reporters, have made him an object of scorn among those who saw the protesters and their demands as anti-Semitic. Oh, shit. I guess their fucking delusions are what matters here. As long as the State Department decides that people's personal delusions and fears trump over the First Amendment protections afforded to every single citizen and non-citizen alike on U.S. soil. What the fuck? This won't survive on appeal either to the district court or the Fifth Circuit. If this is truly the law, then it is unconstitutional as applied because it permits arbitrary and unjustified serious action against Americans. Yes. Well, not American legal permanent residents. That's the extent of it. But not necessarily American citizens, I guess. Which then creates this this two-tier system where American citizens have more rights under the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. Because the Constitution has very clearly determined up until this very moment that citizens and non-citizens alike, documented, undocumented, does not matter. As long as they are on U.S. soil, okay, they have the same rights to due process, and they are still very much protected by the First Amendment. The only area where this does not apply is when you're at the border, okay? That's it. The only area where this does not apply is at the fucking border before you step foot into the United States of America. This is not just an American principle, mind you. This unironically is a fundamental of international human rights. What we're talking about here is quite literally one of the underpinnings of liberal democracy that basically goes all the way back to fucking Magna Carta. Like the due process and this are what made the world what it is today. It's one of the things that we point to when talking about how we don't have any fucking monarchs anymore and how enlightened we are, how evolved we are in comparison to what things used to look like, what governance used to look like. I mean, we had a court system under fucking kings. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, this is insane. It's worse than fucking monarchs somehow. And we're doing all of that for Israel, a foreign country. It is so psychotic. It is so monstrous. Here are Mahmoud Khalil's words after the hearing. At the end of the hearing, Mahmoud Khalil asked to address the court saying, I would like to quote what you said last time, that there's nothing that's more important to this court than due process rights and fundamental fairness. Clearly, what we witnessed today, neither of those principles were present today or in this whole process. This is exactly why the Trump administration has sent me to this court 1,000 miles away from my family. I just hope that the urgency that you deemed fit for me are afforded to the hundreds of others who have been here without hearing for months. Yeah. So make no mistake, yes, the fight is not over for Mahmoud Khalil. He will appeal and go to a federal court. The immigration judge is an employee of the very people trying to deport him. The system is broken. But immigration judges, yes, are employees of the executive branch, not the judiciary, and often approve the Homeland Security Department's deportation efforts. It would be unusual for such a judge serving the U.S. Attorney General to grapple with the constitutional questions raised by Mr. Khalil's case. She would also run the risk of being fired by an administration that has targeted dissenters. No, not for Israel, under the pretense for being for Israel. This is all Donald Trump and the expansion of his powers. Yes, this is true. And this, I do agree with that statement, by the way. As it stands, it is ostensibly for Israel, but Israel is just, and it's, or ostensibly for anti-Semitism, but it's actually for Israel. But even then, it's not just for Israel. It is actually to just violate and shred the fucking First Amendment. That's all this is about. Because the pro-Israeli lobby and pro-Israeli advocacy groups that masquerade as Jewish advocacy groups have a lot of institutional muscle to flex. So they're simply using that institutional muscle because there's no other group in the United States of America, as far as like personal advocacy groups, that have that same level of institutional muscle. So they're just simply using this as a opportunity to open up the floodgates against the First Amendment. This is precisely the reason why, in our history, we have already violated the First Amendment on numerous occasions. Come on, dude. We've already violated the First Amendment on numerous occasions for Israel to begin with. Anti-BDS laws in 37 states is a clear-cut definitional example of said violation. Do you see the admin doing this as a starting point to shred the First Amendment and to later move to something bigger? Or do you think they're only focused on anti-Israel non-citizens? No, I don't think that they're going to stay only focused on anti-Israel non-citizens. I think that they're going to go from anti-Israel to like other erroneous shit like anti-Christian sentiment could be another entry point. You know what I mean? And eventually they will go after citizens as well and turn them into non-citizens, either by way of eroding due process and therefore have no mechanism to figure out whether someone is a citizen or not. I just told you so. But, you know, we're simply going to be operating on the whims of whoever the fuck they've chosen. But that is what I think will happen. They will probably, my suspicion is that they will probably start making assertions as to why it's important to denaturalize people as well. Yeah, anti-Christian policy. Yeah, President Donald Trump, and I've stopped all government censorship and brought back free speech in America. State tells employees to report on one another for anti-Christian bias. Clean water, equity, microplastics, in other words, are banned in leaked USDA memo. Obviously, private groups work to identify and report student protests for possible deportation. Yeah, anti-Trump sentiment is another one. Anti-American sentiment could be another one. Anti-capitalist sentiment will probably be another one as well. It's just Nazi shit. So eventually we will do it. As I've stated already, the goals and the ambitions of this administration to implement fascist policies is endless. And it seems like there's no counter mechanism to push back against it, to fight back against it regardless. Bringing this back, don't send me fucking Yair Rosenberg's article, dude. Trump's anti-Semitism agenda isn't about the Jews. I wrote about how the president and his allies, yeah, fuck this guy. Okay? Fuck Yair Rosenberg, for the record. People that have had endless appetite for undermining and screaming about fucking pro-Palestinian protests, turning around now when push comes to shove and being like, well, don't blame the Jews for this, because they recognize that a lot of people will inevitably blame the Jews for this. The reaping part is fine, but the sowing part I don't really fucking like. Or sorry, the sowing part is fine, but the reaping part I do not like. Yeah, it was awesome when I made the bed, but now I don't want to lie in it. It looks like he's arriving at the right point here, but I agree it's more of a coming from you, this is rich moment. Yeah, exactly. And for the record, you'll see more of this. You see the ADL, the fucking ADL has the audacity to also distance themselves from the likes of Beitar. This happened a couple weeks prior. I covered it, okay? The ADL. It's insane to me that the ADL has any way of removing themselves from this deportation regime. Richie Torres backing down from this. Fiona, hey, enough. Stop barking. God damn.
Marco Rubio was ordered to send to the judge to explain why, in the Secretary of State's opinion, his personal judgment, Khalil his presence in the United States was fundamentally detrimental to the foreign policy goals of the United States. Rubio didn't give any concrete evidence, any evidence whatsoever, really, of wrongdoing. But what he said was he accepted that in the act Rubio is using, the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Foreign Policy Deportation Grounds clause, which was added specifically to protect people from deportation for constitutionally protected freedom of speech and freedom of association, he accepted that there was that safe harbor for freedom of speech and free association. He accepted in the letter that Khalil has done nothing illegal in the past or potentially in the future. But what the letter said was, I have made the personal determination that Khalil's presence is against our foreign policy objectives. And then Rubio cited the foreign policy objective of eradicating anti-Semitism around the world. He said that the anti-genocide protests at Columbia University, he characterized those as anti-Semitic. He said that they created an unsafe environment for Jewish students at Columbia University. And therefore, given that these protests, he was arguing, were fundamentally anti-Semitic. Obviously, we were all there. We know that these were anti-genocide protests. Plenty of Jewish students were there. Because these protests, in his view, were anti-Semitic, therefore Khalil should be deported. That's it. No evidence of any wrongdoing on Khalil's part was presented.
Shihab, this seems that this will be, in many analysts' opinion, a landmark case because it seems to be at the heart of the Constitution with the right to expression of opinion. And then on the other side, the safety, as the US administration would argue, the safety of the United States and their defence. So what does this mean going forward for other cases and other people like Khalil?
Well, going forward now, so much relies on the appeal. Clearly, there will be appeal. Khalil is eligible for a relief application on April the 23rd. So this isn't over by a long shot. There will be more appeals. This legal process will continue. And that's one of the reasons, perhaps, why we're in Louisiana right now. Khalil was arrested in New York. He was briefly detained in New Jersey, so that's where actually the federal legal case about the constitutionality of Khalil's arrest is taking place, in New Jersey. But what the government did was they quickly and secretly bundled him off to this deportation center in Louisiana, instituted deportation proceedings under the the Immigration and Nationality Act, in order to get a parallel process underway. And therefore, to have this legal process take its course in a circuit court arena, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, if it gets that far, which is thought to be way more conservative, which is way more conservative than the arena in New York, the First Circuit Court, where any appeals will end up, which is thought to be more liberal. So you can see that the government always had a long-term plan. This is a long-term test of the limits of this administration's authority to deport any non-US born person in the country, permanent resident, perhaps eventually by implication naturalized citizen, without presenting any evidence, but on the say-so of the Secretary of State that that person is detrimental to the US's foreign policy goals in the future. It's enormous. So, for example, because that would suggest then that Marco Rubio could say, well, this person is against our universal tariffs on the entire world. That's our foreign policy goal. He hasn't done anything wrong. He may not do anything wrong, but his presence here is detrimental to our foreign policy goal of blanket tariffs on the rest of the world. Where does it end? First they came for the anti-genocide protesters. Who's next?
Shihab, I just want to ask you, do you think that there is any chance that Khalil could be deported before the appeal takes place, if that does go ahead?
Well, ordinarily, I'd say no. There's an injunction on his deportation from the federal court in New Jersey. He's not to be deported while those proceedings are underway. But we've seen this administration ignoring court directives and deporting people anyway. They are testing those limits. But I can't possibly say right now. But technically, no. Legally, no.
Okay.
Whether that actually is what happens, I can't say.
Okay, no, we appreciate you addressing that. Our correspondent, Shihab Ratanzi, outside the immigration centre that was hearing the hearing on Mahmoud.
Yeah, that's where we're at. State Department staff told to report cause for anti-Christian bias. I know, I covered it already. That's where we're at right now, chat. That is where we are fucking at. Anyway, now let's get back to the other situation. Fiona, stop trying to... No. Let's get back to the Trump administration also, for seemingly no fucking reason, destroy the global economy and the Chinese retaliation.
China is raising the stakes on retaliation, raising its tariff on U.S. goods to 125% overnight, effective tomorrow, after President Trump yesterday raised the tariff on Beijing to 145%. Xi Jinping remaining defiant, saying China has never relied on handouts in over 70 years, and it is not afraid of, quote, unjust suppression. Joining me now is White House Senior Counselor for Trade and Manufacturing, Peter Navarro. Peter, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining me.
Great to be with you, Maria.
I want to get your take on these deals that President Trump is doing and that you and your team are doing. But first, give us your reaction to now, Xi Jinping, thumping that chest, saying, oh, yeah, you're going there, we're going here, 125% on U.S. goods. How impactful is this going to be?
I love it. I'm going to talk a lot about China. Let me just say 90 deals in 90 days, biggest, broadest tax cut in American history, should be driving the tape. That's what's going to be a bullish market. And if you're not long, you're going to get left behind. Now, China. Let's talk a little bit about China. The president has said several times now that he would love to hear from China to talk about where we're at. And here's where we're at, Maria. From our perspective, China has killed over 1 million Americans with deadly fentanyl and related drugs, and it simply refuses to do anything about that. Many of these people are prime-age workers, so they not only kill Americans, killing our workforce. At the same time, as you know, Maria, and we talk a lot about this, since 2001, China has destroyed over 60,000 American factories and stolen over 5 million manufacturing jobs. That's the state of play. So all we're asking for is fairness. Now, from the Chinese point of view, let me see if we can kind of go there. Let's suppose that I'm an advisor to President Xi right now. What am I telling him? I'm telling him that the Americans have a very legitimate gripe and beef here. They're not attacking China unfairly. They're simply asking.
If I'm Xi Jinping and one of my advisors says that, I have him assassinated. Okay? This isn't like xenophobia, and that's not what I'm saying they do. I'm saying that's what I would do. Okay? It's also not what's happening. These guys are fucking wish casting so hard. Ban again, and shut the fuck up, dude. Shut up. I am allowed to have hypotheticals about I am not Xi Jinping. Shut up. Fuck, man.
Asking us to stop killing them and stop stealing their jobs with their various unfair trade practices. What we should do, Mr. Xi, again, I'm a Chinese advisor right now, is do what we should have done over a decade ago, is move towards a domestic consumption dependent economy and lift our people out of prosperity, not just with wages, but to give them the wherewithal to actually buy stuff, and that we should move to an accommodation and pick up the phone. And I would tell President Xi, if I'm his advisor, is like, look, we're a prisoner of our history. The British unfairly killed us with their opium, took our wealth, took our ports, with these unequal treaties. But this is not that with the Americans. The Americans have a very legitimate beef with us, and we need to come to some kind of accommodation and pick up the phone. Yeah. That's where they should go. Now, that advisor would probably wind up immediately in a Chinese prison, and therein lies the tale.
Yeah, unbelievable. Peter, I know you've studied China a lot over your career. I remember years ago talking.
Unbelievable is right. As in, this fucking American donkey has the audacity to, one, fantasize about what kind of conversation is supposed to be taking place among Xi Jinping and his advisors. But also, secondly, as oh no, rebalancing trade in this regard is actually beneficial for Chinese prosperity. The fuck do you know about prosperity, dumbass? You're an American. The only thing that has prospered in the unfair trade regime that the United States of America has designed, where paper IOUs are a perfect substitute for making the rest of the world fucking make cheap, affordable treats for the American labor force that no longer have jobs because of this design. The only one that has prospered in this situation are fucking American capital owners. The fuck do you know about how to make your country prosper? How about you make your country prosper? How about you advise Donald Trump to make this country prosper right now and not in the direction of nuking global trade for no fucking reason other than I'm bored, or for a agenda that you will never be able to bring about without turning the American economy to a Chinese-style centrally planned economy. And even then, it would take fucking decades to get there. It's just it's so fucking frustrating, man. It's like in our endless greed, have designed the system. It's caused domestic instability. We have no choice we have no mechanism of fixing that at all. We're not even trying to fix that at all. We just simply want manufacturing to be here. And we have no policies for making that happen other than nuking global trade.
Talking about the bad behavior of the CCP with you, how would you assess the Chinese economy today? In other words, the tariffs that President Trump is putting on the Chinese economy is going to have a much bigger impact, in my view, on the Chinese economy than the opposite in terms of what they're doing to us.
You can't be a surplus economy, which China is, running a massive trade surplus with us, and think you can possibly win moving up the escalatory ladder. The rest of the world has gotten that message. I mean, if you think about the trade deficits we run with the EU, with Vietnam, with South Korea, with Japan, with India and others, Malaysia, Indonesia, if they tariff us at the same rate, they're hurting themselves far worse. And the same thing with China. They haven't, China, I mean, again, I think they're a prisoner.
So when we tariff China, we're not hurting ourselves. When China tariffs us, China's hurting themselves. How does that work? Surplus aside, one question will undermine this entire conversation. Any conversation that Republicans have going forward. What do you do about how everything is more expensive now? What do you do about that? What do you do when everything is more expensive? How much bandwidth do you think you have? How much political and social capital can you expend in your desires to undermine the entire regime of global trade that you have designed?
Of their history, it's almost hubris, their pride, going back to the Opium Wars. But I would just simply say, this is not that, China. This is not that. You're killing Americans, you're taking our jobs, and the rest of the world is watching you, because it's not.
Nothing funnier than bringing up the Opium Wars while simultaneously claiming that another reason why we're punishing China, quote unquote punishing China, is because of fentanyl, which literally became a problem not because a foreign nation like China came in and started giving Americans fentanyl and got them hooked on opiates, as opposed to what the British did to China. But instead, because of our, once again, and you might be shocked to hear this, capital owners and their endless fucking greed. It was the goddamn Sackler family. We know who the villains are in this story. And yet again, lo and behold, it's not fucking China. Unless you think the Sacklers are Chinese. We're so goddamn stupid and selfish. It is crazy.
Just America that you're hurting. You're hurting you take from Latin America and Africa all their natural resources. You dump goods into Europe. And that it's an unsustainable equilibrium. That's the bottom line. We got to a point, Maria, where the U.S. can't keep doing what it's doing. We're sending too much of our wealth abroad through the trade deficit and losing too many jobs, and we don't have the ability to defend ourselves because we're losing our defense industrial base. And China can't keep dumping stuff on world markets thinking that everybody's going to keep buying it. So they need to take care of their own people. They need to let their own people be consumers, not just work in their slave labor sweatshops.
Well, they're gonna get that if they haven't already. President Trump.
What do you mean? They can't dump their goods? What are you talking about? If there was no issue with that, the trade war tariff conversation wouldn't even be taking place. You know, people would be saying, okay, well, we don't want Chinese goods anymore. We want American-made goods, except everybody wants Chinese-made goods.
Is not ruling out extending the 90-day pause on tariffs. Here's the president yesterday responding to Fox Business's Edward Lawrence. Watch this.
So how close are you to the first country coming to actually make a deal with the United States over tariffs? Is it days, months?
Well, I think it's very close, but, you know, we have to have a deal that we like. We don't want a deal that's going to be a bad deal, or I could make every deal in one day if I wanted to.
China retaliated today by reducing the number of American films that can be shown there. What's your reaction to them now targeting cultural exports from the United States?
I think I've heard of worse things.
The president is so funny. I love that answer. But Australia's deputy prime minister shut down.
Oh my God, bro. This dumb fuck is gonna collapse every sector, dude. He is so funny. Oh, I can think of worse things. Can you? You fucking idiot. That's like hundreds of thousands of jobs, dude. What are you talking
China's
about?
offer to work together against Trump's tariffs, saying that they will not make common cause or hold hands, quote unquote. Europe as well. You just mentioned Europe. They signaled last night after the close, no partnership with China. They declined to accept China's rerouted dumped goods into the United States. But Peter, you just mentioned a minute ago, 90 deals in 90 days. So can you give us an update, Peter? Where are we in terms of all these negotiations? Go ahead.
I'd love to take you behind the scenes, Maria, because it's so different from the first term. Jamison Greer, the United States Trade Representative, he's got over 30 years of experience. He's a calm, kind person, but he's the toughest SOB in the world when it comes to trading. He's at the tip of the spear for the president because he's the United States trade rep. He's got a whole portion of our White House working day and night. We started working on these deals months ago because we anticipate. That's what we do. We anticipate. So what's going to happen here is Jamison Greer and Howard Lutnick are going to work very closely together. Howard, in addition to knowing the bond market better than anybody in the world, is also a great negotiator. So we're going to run 90 deals in 90 days is possible. The boss is going to be the chief negotiator. Nothing's done without him looking very carefully at it. He has such a fine attention to detail. Scott Bessent is going to handle countries like Japan and South Korea, where there's a lot of currency issues associated with.
Dude. If I lived outside of the United States and had no care or consideration for what happens to its citizens, and there's plenty of good reason to not have any empathy at this point for whatever the fuck happens to Americans, I'd be celebrating right now. I'd be popping champagne. I'd be like, huh, fuck them. Fuck us. You know? This is psychotic. What a stain on the planet, dude. What a fucking blight we are. So gross.
With that. And then you have good. Kevin Hassett, who you had many times on your show, who's really, really good analytically, and also is carrying the football with Scott on the tax policy, which is an important part of our situation.
Yeah,
Stephen Miller is doing a beautiful job coordinating things. And J.D. Vance has just been a breath of fresh air. I knew Mike Pence well. I liked Mike, but Mike didn't know anything about policy, and he was hamstrung by this guy, Mark Short, who was his chief of staff, who destroyed Pence's career. J.D. Vance gets it. J.D. Vance was at ground zero. While I was back in 2006, right in the coming China wars, J.D. Vance I was up there, looking down at the carnage. J.D. Vance was part of that carnage. So he gets it. He's got a great chief of staff himself. I love Jake. So what I'm trying to signal, Maria, is that this team is just the best in history. And by the way, Marco Rubio, when we need stuff in terms of the interface with diplomacy, Doug Burgum, Chris Wright, when we're doing like the LNG deals from Alaska. So America should trust in Trump. The market should trust in Trump and not get these weak knees, because this is going to be bullish.
We had a good week this week. I'm calling it the $5 trillion Jamie Dimon interview. Because that huge move the other day is so strong that we're still showing gains for the week. But let's face it, the stock market has lost trillions in market value over the last couple of weeks, as there was that unwinding in the bond market. Treasury Secretary
basically was like, shut up. Shut the fuck up. Jamie Dimon came in and called Trump a fucking idiot to his face in the White House after the bond market started screaming. You gotta fix it.
Secretary Bessent was with me on Wednesday addressing it. Here's what he said.
There's one of these deleveraging convulsions that's going on right now in the markets, and I think it's in the fixed income market. There's some very large leverage players who are experiencing losses. They're having to deleverage. I believe that there is nothing systemic about this. I think that it is an uncomfortable but normal deleveraging that's going on in the bond market, and I expect that as we see the leverage come down, the risk managers tapping people on the shoulders, telling them to bring their books down, which is what happens every couple of years as leverage builds up, then the market will calm down.
Is China jumping treasuries to try to put pressure on this market?
Yeah, I think it works against their purposes if they are dumping treasuries, because if they're dumping treasuries, then they have to buy something else. If they sell dollars, then they strengthen their currency. And as I said earlier, they've actually been weakening their currency, which is a loser for everyone. Right. And again, when I hear all these stories, the dollar is no longer going to be the reserve currency. If you end up with the Chinese who are willing to use their currency as a trade tool, that doesn't seem like a very good reserve asset to me.
I mean, America has used their currency as a trade tool in the opposite direction because of its status as the reserve currency. If in a hypothetical scenario where the yuan becomes the fucking global trade currency, we don't know how they would use that power. It would be really funny if America if America became so goddamn poor and devalued its currency so much that like the role reversal took place, but because America is obviously neoliberal and doesn't have a command economy and is not interested in socialism at all or any sort of central planning at all, America basically becomes India to China. China becomes America, where they're just like, yeah, we don't need to fucking manufacture stuff here anymore. We already dominate that space. We already dominated it. Let's make the poor Americans work in the fucking factories for a little bit so they can make us our treats. Now that we are the fucking global reserve currency, envisioning a future where the American Rust Belt is grown, but at what cost? Now they are the ones who are making cheap, affordable goods and treats for China and India. And this time, there is, of course, no improvement to their material conditions because the government doesn't work like that there or here. I don't know why I'm saying there. I'm talking about here, obviously. Like the Obama documentary, The Factory. But this time, it's real. Yeah. All the while, we're having these discussions, and yes, MAGA Twitter is talking about how they want to fucking nuke the Three Gorges Dam because Americans have one speed. You said China is going to bail us out again? I don't think so. It's not 2012 anymore. Anyone who has the means to get property abroad should do so. People would like to think our hegemony wouldn't end in such a dumb way. Don't know how our elites psyop themselves into thinking we're actually supreme. No, I don't. No. It has nothing to do with American hegemony or anything, or thinking that American hegemony is supreme. I'm just analyzing China's actions, behaviors, both historically and in contemporary history, and I'm looking at their interest in restraint and their interest in stability, especially because they benefit from the current order of business instead of becoming the hegemonic power. Yeah. Why would China devalue their currency at the same time that they sell bonds? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's why I don't think it was China. At first, I thought it was China that was selling the American bonds, and then I read the report from the guy at Fox News that said it wasn't China, it was actually Japan doing it, which I thought was also interesting. I think it probably was Japan because China then devalued its currency to continue its trade advantage even further, which would go against their wishes. My initial assessment, what I thought was that China would not actually devalue its China would actually value its currency against Americans in an effort to show good faith that Americans are obviously not deserving of, but that's what I thought China was doing there. And then it turns out I don't even think China was doing that because they have devalued the yuan again.
Yeah, good luck with that if you want to use the yuan as your reserve currency. Peter, look, I want to get your take on the metrics that we should be focused on in this next 90 days because the market really wants to hear deals. Do you expect, I'm not sure how much you can say here, but do you expect that the early deals, the big deals, will be Japan, South Korea, and India? Are those going to be among the first?
I'm not getting ahead of the boss. Don't get ahead of the boss.
Okay.
That's why I'm still here. But I can tell you, we've had discussions with Australia, the UK, Israel, and Japan, South Korea. And there's others that I don't know about. There's a lot of wisdom in what Scott Bessent said. But look, there's been a lot of de-risking already. There's a lot of cash on the sidelines. Yeah. And I would note, it's kind of ironic, Jamie Dimon, well, he's wringing his hands about all this. His firm made out like bandits trading on the volatility. And that's the concern here. The small investor needs to just sit tight, not panic, and don't let these big...
I'm not going to narrate. I mean, like, dude, imagine being the guy that goes, can you please narrate for those of us who are driving? Well, you wrote that in the fucking chat. So clearly you're not paying attention to the fucking road anyway. Might as well read the screen too, big dog. Answer is no.
I have had the opportunity to tell the president personally about our commitment to openness, to international cooperation, to broadening our network of relations with other countries and also with other regional blocs. Spain is in favor of more balanced relations between the European Union and China, of finding negotiated solutions to our differences, which we have, and of greater cooperation in areas of common interest. Spain is an active player in building the transatlantic link with a historic partner such as the United States. We want to contribute to this positive relationship between the European Union and the United States, which I believe has been mutually beneficial. And at the same time, we believe it is necessary to continue making progress in establishing solid relations between China and the European Union and also between China.
Voice text exists, but you do you, big dog? All right. I don't care.
And Spain. I've conveyed to the president, as I've also said publicly in the media on other occasions, trade wars are not good. Nobody wins, and this is clear. The world needs both China and the United States to talk.
I'm so jealous. Get to just hang out with Xi like that. Xi gets to go to your country, or no, he's in China. I guess Spain went to the big dogs.
We want to have as many bees as we can, make honey.
At Secret Garden Bees, a honey farm in Linden, North Carolina, farmer Jim Hartman has one eye on his bees and the other on his bank account.
Ideally, we'll get 100 pounds of honey per hive per year.
How do you feel about paying more for things?
Well, you know, if you find someone who says, I'm happy about paying more for something, you point them out to me. People who already couldn't afford fresh vegetables, who couldn't already afford to put good food on their plate, are the ones that are really going to be hurt by this.
Did you ever think when you voted for President Trump that things were going to cost you more and you were going to lose money?
I never thought I was going to lose this much money. this fast.
Jim is a Republican who voted for Donald Trump 3 times.
How do you feel about your vote for Donald Trump now?
Well, I feel like perhaps I should have considered some other options.
Among other things, Jim imports packaging supplies for...
I'm sorry, hard to not. This hits like crack, dude. Like, bitch, you voted for him thrice, you know? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, well, can't fool me again. Fool me 3 times, fuck the peace sign. Take the chopper out. Or whatever the fuck he said. Not GW, I'm talking J. Cole. Did you say white? You said I'm white for not knowing a J. Cole lyric? The fuck? Knowing the J. Cole lyric is a infinitely whiter trait than not knowing it.
For his honey, so he's paying real close attention to the tariffs Trump just put in place.
We just bought our year's supply of bottles from Taiwan and our year's supply of corks from Portugal about 3 weeks ago. So that would have been, another $5,000 or $6,000 out of my pocket.
Which is partly why he's repairing instead of replacing this 40-year-old forklift.
The cost of equipment has just gone through the roof to buy anything like that because it just would be cost prohibitive.
He's also holding off on improvements around the farm.
Well, we're not going to hire any more people, that's for sure.
It's more than just the tariffs. For the past 2 years, Jim has been selling honey to the federal government, which then provides it to schools and food banks. But after Donald Trump took office, the USDA cut those programs suddenly as part of the federal government's effort to streamline spending.
For a lot of other local farmers around here, it was a major source of reliable revenue. For me, it's going to cost me around $150,000 a year.
$150,000?
Yeah, roughly 50% of my revenue.
That's a huge hit.
That's a massive hit.
Not far from Jim's farm, we...
Oh my God. Oh my God, bro. Oh my God. That's fucking hilarious. Dude, oh, come on. This hits good. This hits good. After all the fucking awful shit, after all the awful shit that we just watched, like, this kind of hits like crack cocaine. You know what I mean? God damn. I've yet to meet a man more deserving of this. I just wish there was a way to make only this happen. You know what I mean? For every dollar out of the $150,000 that guy loses, though, there's like a million other people that are fucked over way worse. There is something hilarious about being a guy who relies on federal government subsidies, voting 3 times for a dude who goes, I'm going to take away the subsidies. No more government handouts. It's like your fucking uncle living in West Virginia who's getting disability payments being like, I hate these fucking welfare queens. Like, it's like, dude, you are the welfare queen. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you voted for Trump. He's gonna take your disability away. You're fucked. You're gonna die. You might as well get back on fentanyl now because you're fucking cooked, big dog. Might as well get right on that opium straight from the fucking street because you're gonna fucking die anyway because you voted for a guy who wants to kill you. What are we doing? You're not part of the team, little bro. You're not. What made you think you were a part of the team? Oh, because he's gonna do this to brown people? No, he fucking hates the poor, dumbass. And you are one.
Found other Trump supporters who give the president high marks on tariffs.
How do you feel about the tariffs?
Well, I feel like for years we've been getting ripped off, and why not make it fair? 0-0. And I think Trump was upfront about it. He said we're going to hurt some now.
I think some of the countries they're already starting to come around. It's going to be good. I really believe that.
Yeah. No, I try so hard not to be libbed up and be like one of those people that's like, well, you're suffering and you kind of deserve it. But goddamn, these kinds of pieces make it impossible, dude. It's just, I want this analysis almost exclusively from Asmongold chatters. Like, I want some journalists to go up to Asmongold chatters and be like, so what do you think right now? It seems that the hentai that you consume is now either A, illegal in the state of Texas, or B, tariffed out the wazoo. How do you feel? He's like, oh, well, one day it's going to be all right because America's going to be good, I think. Yeah, boist.
You have faith in Trump?
Yes, I do.
I think he's doing the right thing. In order for us to get back where we need to be, he needs to get the money somewhere, and they're charging us Why not charge them?
Back at Jim's farm, though, still plenty of work.
What are you saying, bro? What? You've been alive for so many years. You haven't even been accidentally. You accidentally haven't even like encountered the truth. How does this possible? These people are so easy to dupe, man. None of them know how tariffs work. None of them care to understand it. None of them care to understand the impact. Starts hitting their fucking wallets. Like, at least the small business owner kind of understands directly who's fucking him over, right? At least this business owner understands it, partially because like $150,000 of revenue, which is 50% of his yearly earnings. Well, that's pretty significant. When that goes away directly because the federal government no longer has that program, you're like, okay, well, you fucked me. You fucked me big time. You fucking piece of shit. You destroyed my life. But for a lot of these other people, like, they're just going to see prices go up on everything, partially because of the tariffs and partially because of market competition. Other companies, even domestically manufactured companies, are most likely going to increase their prices as well because they can get away with it. That's just how it works. Sorry, sucks to suck. God forbid we have any sort of regulation surrounding that thing. That would be communism. Can't have that. And I don't think they're going to understand who did this to them. They're not going to go, oh, maybe Trump's moves were responsible for my current financial predicaments. They'll just go, yeah, it's because he hasn't killed enough gay people or some shit.
He says raw honey is considered a luxury good, similar to organic vegetables. As prices rise,
I don't know what that's going to do to consumer spending.
Trump paused the majority of the tariffs for 90 days after we'd left Jim's farm. Jim told us by phone, it's flip-flopped so many times you can't take it to the bank. Who knows what it will be next week? Adding, it seems like he's heard the American.
No, it'll just be unlimited xenophobia. Yeah, those guys are probably going to think, it's the Chinese. How dare the Chinese do this to me? I can see that. They'll blame China. God, people are so fucking stupid. I have no, I lose the remaining empathy that I have for these motherfuckers. Read if you can. My uncle in West Virginia died on welfare, had an addiction to opium, was the cause of death. You're not wrong. Fucked up but true. Sucks, but this is the reality as people hits home. Yeah. The thing is, like, even for domestically manufactured goods, the way that global trade is designed, there are so many parts of the domestically manufactured goods that will have their prices increase because every aspect of trade touches different parts of the planet. Like, think about your computer for a second. Every business needs computer parts. Every business needs computers, okay? Just that alone. Think about what that does. Think about where your GPU, like all the different parts of your GPU come from. Think about all the different parts where your CPU, like all the parts, the components that make up your CPU, where that comes from. The minerals necessary that need to be extracted from different parts of the planet, assembled in a manufacturing plant in most likely China. The chips are made in Taiwan. Like, dude, there is no way to apply universal tariffs at 10% and not assume that even domestic goods are not going to go up in price. Everything will go up in price.
People. Randy Kay, CNN, Linden, North Carolina.
Everything's computer. Everything. I love Tesla. Everything's computer.
On volatility and uncertainty brought on by the trade war that we were just talking about. You know, you've got China announcing it's raising retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods from 84% to 25%. That coming after President Trump hiked the rate of Chinese goods, the rate on Chinese goods coming into America from 104% now to 145%. All of that, creating so much uncertainty, is having a real and immediate impact on businesses big and small across the country. One small business owner joined us on the show just yesterday describing how the daily chaos and the changes in policy have left her with no good options.
It's hard to make a decision. You know, we had an idea yesterday after the announcement of, well, maybe we can export to Australia, repackage the products, and then re-import them from there. But because policy changes every 36 hours or so, I don't want to make that decision and make that move only for something else to change in just a couple more days. I'm paralyzed. I can't even make a decision.
Yeah, I was surprised when this person said Hasanabi had confirmed and he said yes. I doubt that this person is actually a Hasanabi head. Spencer Hakimian, founder of Tulu Capital Management, global macro market neutral, risk optimization, aiming for positive real returns in all climates, not investment advice. I think he's just like, I'd be shocked if this guy is actually in here all the time. I think he just says yes to people responding. He doesn't even follow me.
Decision right now.
Paralyzed. Another big area of concern is what this means for American farmers, of course. China is, among other things, the biggest export market for American soybeans. China bought 52% of American soybean exports last year, throwing American soybean farmers, understandably, into a whole new level of uncertainty right now. And joining me right now is Scott Metzger. He's a soybean farmer out of Ohio, also serves on the board of directors for the American Soybean Association. Scott, thank you very much for...
What do we do? The fuck do we do? So much winning. We'll never stop winning. I mean, look at him. He's fucking mad. He is big mad.
For waking up and taking time to speak with me this morning. This
smiling through the pain.
Change. I was looking forward to getting your take yesterday afternoon, and now we have this new change overnight coming from China announcing 125% tariff on all U.S. goods coming in.
Yeah, I mean, look, these guys will probably get bailouts, but that's not going to be enough anyway. And you can't bail out the entire economy. What do you do for the consumers, you know?
Includes on soybeans. What does this tariff on this new level of tariff on your produce mean for you?
Good morning, Kate. Yeah, it's an alarming concern. With the tighter farm economy that we're in now, the tariffs are just adding issues to problems that we already have. It's just making it more complex and making it harder to make decisions on what we need to do.
I've heard the word complex from a couple farmers actually as well. It's already a complicated situation, and now it's becoming even more complex. I mean, you're, I believe, a sixth generation farmer, farming with your brother and cousins. How does this moment feel for you?
Well, we never have, going back to 2018. We really haven't recovered from the tariff trade wars back then, and we were probably 40% higher on soybean prices back then, and the farm economy in general was a lot better back then. So you go forward to now with what we are, and a lot tighter farm economy, and complex, and adding these tariffs to it, it makes things really, really difficult. A fear that we have, if this continues into the fall or even into next year, there's a potential that there'll be some farms go out of business. You could have a next generation not want to come back or not able to come back just because of the economies or the farm situation in general. And adding these tariffs to this, there's just no room for error. But personally, in our operation in the state of Ohio last year, we were in extreme drought, and we roughly had half of a soybean crop and a corn crop last year. So in our area, it's feeling it even a little bit more. Having less of a commodity sale and these lower prices, and now we're throwing the tariffs on top of it. It just makes things very difficult.
And at the White House, in his cabinet meeting yesterday, the Agriculture Secretary spoke up, talking about, if there's one thing, if people know, a group of people who know uncertainty would be farmers and ranchers. And I'm wondering what your ask, your plea, or just your message would be to the president in the midst of this, given your long experience.
Yeah, except this uncertainty is not born out of like famine or something. You know what I mean? It's born out of the unpredictable president. This is straightforwardly as man-made as it gets. First, the FDA made soy the 9th major allergen, and now this. Bro can't catch a break, Lamau.
And what you guys are facing.
Yeah, we urge the administration to quickly couple the announcement with some negotiations to address the tariff and non-tariff barriers with the U.S. exports. We want.
Oh my God! An alert from U.S. Customs and Border Protection on Friday notified user of a glitch in the system that is used to exempt freight from tariffs. including shipments from China that were already on the water at the time of this week's whipsaw in tariff policy, and any trade from nations now under the 90-day pause put in place by the Trump administration. The alert explained that U.S. Customs discovered that the entry code for U.S. shippers to use to have their freight exempted is not working, and the issue is being reviewed. In the alert, Customs advised filers to transmit cargo release separately and follow up with a summary filing when resolved. Normally, when a U.S. importer pays for their freight, they file both the cargo release forms and their financial papers so they can pay for the cargo. To keep the cargo moving, Customs is advising importers to file the cargo release form now and file the financial form later once the glitch is corrected. For now, that means the tariffs are not being collected by the U.S. government. I don't understand why this is Doge related, though. I don't know how we were putting the blame on Doge. Everything's computer. Everything is Tesla. Fix the people who manage the systems. Yeah, oh, you mean fired? Yeah. Wall Street analysts censoring their research to avoid potential retaliation from Trump. This is a big deal. Wall Street analysts self-censoring their research is never a good thing. Wait, what? Did he self-censor? I mean, I think it's a bit dramatic. Sean Duffy, Transport Secretary, openly blamed Doge.
But I want to talk about Doge for a second.
No, for cuts after multiple fatal aircraft crashes. Yeah, that's transportation. Oh my God, they're all gonna pile on, even if it's not. Doge oversees the computer systems of the entire government. I mean, that could very well be a glitch born out of Doge, either directly as a consequence of the cuts that they made to people that would normally oversee such a thing, or directly born out of the fact that they were supposed to be handling the payment processors and things of that nature. But it will be very funny when people blame Doge, even when it's not their fault, because everybody just hates Elon. Speaking of everybody hating Elon, I do want to talk about this. Midas Touch posted this, my goats, as you guys know, big time Midas Touch fanboy in perpetuity. I was in the ground floor as a Midas Touch fan, and now they have blossomed into this beautiful franchise. It's going to be a really sad day when I'm in their crosshairs as someone who is a threat to the liberal order. But for the time being, as you guys know, these are the liberals who fight. So I love the boomer, like George W. Bush era liberalism attitude that they've always had. Hassan is a lib confirmed. No, I just have nostalgia for George W. Bush era liberalism. And Midas Touch has carried that torch, including but not limited to stuff like this. You can't make fun of anything anymore. They try to make comedy illegal, make comedy great again. Concerning. See, this like saying anyone and everyone is Adolf Hitler, like that is the real resistance. That's the last bastion of that is the last bastion of real resistance liberalism. Okay, like back when liberals would be like, stem cell research being cut, not on my watch. George W. Bush is a ape. He's a dumb ape. Here's a hastily photoshopped, shittily drawn photo of George W. Bush looking like a monkey, like that kind of shit. It was awesome. Anyway, let's take a look at this article. I've been in the same room with Elon, and he always tries to be funny, and he's not funny, like, at all, says a senior Trump administration official. He makes these jokes and little asides and smiles and then looks almost hurt if you don't lap up his humor. I keep using the word annoying. A lot of people who have to deal with him do. But the word doesn't do the situation justice. Elon just thinks he's smarter than everyone else in the room and acts like it, even when it's clear he doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, so I guess people that are in his immediate vicinity can also see what I'm seeing from afar. That's cool. Fucking loser. Musk has gnawed at the patience of an array of high-ranking administration officials to the point that, according to this official and two others, Trump lieutenants have walked out of meetings and earnestly asked one another if they thought Musk was high. The answer is probably. Administration officials joked to one another about subjecting Musk to mandatory drug testing, which Musk himself has said would be a great idea for federal employees. A lawyer for Musk has said he's regularly and randomly drug tested at SpaceX and has never failed a test. Talking to the guy is sometimes like listening to really rusty nails on a chalkboard, says the senior Trump administration official, who adds that Musk is not much of a team player either. He's just the most irritating person I've ever had to deal with, and that is saying something. Trump admin threatening to pull contracts from AWF if Amazon doesn't delist specific books that are critical of his administration. Wait, what? Who are they going to work with? Microsoft? Like, there's not, you know, I'm sure Microsoft will piss him off at some point too. Does he like Bill Gates more than Jeff Bezos? I don't think so. Oh my God. They're going to be like, we're going to pull AWS contracts if you don't ban Hassan. Just kidding. It wouldn't take that much to ban me. Elon is self-aware. His response to Nate Silver's polling tracker. We just launched an Elon Musk popularity tracker to accompany our Trump approval tracker. Currently, he's at least -14 as compared to Trump's -5. The inevitable outcome of having political propaganda war waged against me while I have almost no countervailing campaign and, at times, digging my own grave way better than my enemies do. Shut up. I hate you. I got it. He's so annoying. Even when he's self-aware, he's fucking annoying. There's not a single moment where he is able to fucking claw himself out of this approvals rating hell that he's in. David Pacman said he and Brian Tyler Cohen's books were on the list. Wait, what? The Trump administration is afraid of David Pacman and Brian Tyler Cohen's books? What? What are you? No. How do we know this? Is this real? This is insane. I work for a very large cloud service provider. We have a lot of government clients. Another side of our company sells books online. You have 100% heard of them. Today, my boss got this email that one of our largest government clients is going to cancel the contract if we don't remove these books that are critical of Trump. This is nuts. We have nothing to do with the book side of the business. Wait, what? Dude, I'm sorry. This sounds insane. No. Dude, come on. David Pacman talks about it. I don't. This seems unbelievable. Because the censorship aspect and like threatening to revoke AWS contracts is one thing. Okay. Threatening to revoke AWS contracts to like ban certain books. I totally get the Trump administration would do that. I just don't think that they would do that for a Brian Stelter book, a book from Heather Cox Richardson, a book from Mary L. Trump, a book from Brian Tyler Cohen, and Brian Krasenstein, Ed Krasenstein, How the People Trumped Ronald Plump. This seems like a meme made by a resistance liberal or something. I'm sorry. Like, there are infinitely more radical and scary books. Like, these books themselves being the reason for why it just seems so far-fetched. Like, I feel like there is a million trans books that they would want to ban before this. You know what I mean? It's just, this has got to be a joke. Come on, dude. Leaders in government are all online nerds. I don't, look, David Pacman's coverage on this is not enough proof. If the proof is coming ultimately from a Reddit post that David is responding to, I'm sorry. That's not, like, we need to be serious here. Is there, some of y'all are so fucking libbed up. Maybe they're doing it. I'm not even discounting it because the Trump administration is that insane. Something about it doesn't pass my smell test. My one critique of you is that you overestimate your enemy / opposition ability to be normal. Dude, it's a fucking random Reddit post with 1,000 upvotes. Are you fucking stupid? Until there's like real valid evidence, until there's real investigations happening or Amazon taking the initiative or something, I'm not gonna fucking believe anyone can post anything on fucking Reddit, dude. Are you guys so stupid? What is happening? Even if this is real, it doesn't even have enough updates. I can't believe some of you dumb fucks are literally going source la Reddit right now. What the fuck? Stop linking me the David Pacman video. What the fuck? Link me a fucking article. Yeah, dude, watch this, bro. It's about a dog that plays basketball. It's online. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Take a day off. There's no way you're fucking... There's no way you just sent me the enough Reddit spam or enough Trump spam Reddit post. Motherfucker went source la Reddit. Oh my God. I think some of you guys are also susceptible to the fucking propaganda that you hear against me from time to time. When motherfuckers be like, Hassan goes on Twitter all the time. That's where he gets his sources from. No, dude. I don't get my sources just from Twitter. I'm looking at fucking what journalists are posting on Twitter because that's where they're breaking their stories and summarizing them. I'm not just going off of a fucking random person's opinion on Twitter and being like, well, this is breaking news. Some guy on fucking Twitter said something, okay? Because the reality of the matter is, the only primary source for this thing that you claim is happening coming from fucking Twitter is just, that's it. If I were to look at like a random blue checkmark account, like one of those WL community karma farmers on Twitter and being like, well, I guess this guy said something happened.
And out of respect for our good friend Peter. Jeff.
Why is American consumer confidence so low?
Look, I think there's a great optimism in this economy, great optimism for the American people, a lot of reason for people to feel optimistic. The president is, as I just said, trying to renegotiate the global trade agenda that has ripped off the American people for far too long. As he said, this is going to be a period of transition. He wants consumers to trust in him, and they should trust in him. Look at what he did in his first term. And I just want to reiterate all of the reasons to be confident since you asked, Jeff. For those watching at home, yesterday the CPI report, inflation declined massively. Consumer prices are dropping for the first time in years. Energy prices are down. In fact, oil prices are down 20% since this president took office. Wholesale prices fell again. There have been trillions of dollars in investments into this country. Every day the president is signing executive orders to cut regulation, especially when it comes...
lowest consumer confidence in 45 years, but you don't understand. They're actually so confident. They're just faking it. You know what I mean? They're faking out the market. Listen, look at the silver lining, okay? There is no way for consumer confidence to go anywhere but up.
Comes to Environmental Protection Agency, our energy industry, that's going to unleash the economic boom in this country that we saw in the president's first term. So trust in President Trump. He knows what he's doing. This is a proven economic formula.
What does he ask?
Number in Europe that wants to come to America. Oh yeah, I talked about this already. Again, this is from columnist and chief data reporter of the Financial Times, a real journalist summarizing real journalism and real data analysis that they put in the Financial Times, which is a pretty reputable paper. Okay. I'm just going to explain that aspect of it so you guys also develop some fucking critical media literacy here. The number of people traveling from Europe to the U.S. in recent weeks has plummeted as much as by 35%. As travelers have canceled plans in response to Trump's policies and rhetoric and horror stories from the border. Denmark saw one of its steepest declines in an indication of anger over Trump's hostility towards Greenland, maybe contributing to the steep drop-off in the number of visitors. Corporate quotes are usually pretty dry, but the co-founder of major travel website Kayak wasn't mincing his words. In just 2 months, Trump has destroyed the reputation of the U.S., shown one way by diminished travel from the EU to the U.S., said Paul English, co-founder of the travel website Kayak. This is not only one more terrible blow to the U.S. economy, it also represents reputation damage that could take generations to repair. I think one of the funniest aspects of this is because of Trump's honesty. Like, at least previous administrations or more competent administrations will make it seem as though this is medicine, this is good for you. The Trump administration, on the other hand, does not do that. They don't do that at all. This guy said, why are you always lying? And then didn't even fucking tell me. Also, this guy literally linked messages. Okay, this is your messages. Do you understand? As in, if I clicked on this thing while live on stream, it would open up my Twitter messages. 30 minutes for that. I know you didn't mean that on purpose. I know you didn't do it. What is this? U.S. tourism, expensive meals, Japan, cheap meals, better food. Just realized the Iceland data got cut off from the original image because the decline was too steep to fit. Nice. Euro soars to 3-year highs. Investors flee U.S. assets over tariff woes. 5D chess, baby. Canadian travel is down 60 to 75% based on recent reports, too. I mean, this is the least surprising thing of all time.
The Supreme Court has ruled against the...
All right. There's also one other thing that's going on, obviously. As I've talked about yesterday extensively, the Supreme Court... Wait, what? Wait, what the fuck is... Wait, what? Did this just happen? Wait, what the fuck? What the hell? Just in, President Trump is authorizing the military to occupy and take jurisdiction over public land along the southern border. Oh, okay. It's public land along the southern border. Trump says it will be phased implementation and begins with a limited sector of federal lands. Oh my God. He wants to mobilize the troops on the border. Is that what's going on? What's happening here? Is he just like is he planning a ground invasion of Mexico? What the fuck? What are we doing? Okay. This seems not great. Didn't he say he was going to strike the cartels? Yeah, he did. Streets are saying he will invoke the Insurrection Act this month. Wait, what? Yeah, he's going to do guys, it's fine. It's just a special military operation or Israeli style buffer zones. You know, America has security concerns.
The Trump administration in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was mistakenly deported last month on one of the flights to a notorious prison in El Salvador. The court says steps must be taken to return him to the U.S., something the White House argues they don't have the jurisdiction to do. Scott McFarland has the story. Scott, good morning.
Dana, good morning. It was a unanimous decision that Kilmar Abrego Garcia must be returned. The Supreme Court didn't set a deadline, but they ruled the Trump administration must facilitate getting him out of that Salvadoran prison and back to the U.S.
Oh, the Insurrection Act is the fucking April 20th meme that's circulating online that Donald Trump is going to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 on 4/20/2025, followed by him declaring martial law. That's what you guys are saying, right? That's like, I think that's like the liberal QAnon, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's fucking insane, but seems a bit far-fetched. I heard that from someone who trusted TikTok psychics for election advice.
It's been nearly a month since Kilmar Abrego Garcia was plucked from a street in Maryland by federal agents, detained, arrested, and flown with more than 200 others to El Salvador. After pleas from his wife that he has no...
You never know, dude. Come on, dude. Okay. I have it on good authority from the TikToks that I watched that Donald Trump is actually going to nuke Ohio. He's crazy. He could do it. Do you understand why we can't operate with that kind of thinking? Like, we can't just simply say, like, well, he's crazy. He could do it. Like, I get it. He is crazy. But as far as I understand, it's just like the actual martial law rumor came from fucking Facebook. Or no, text originated from a March 21st article archive reported to be on the publishing platform medium.com. Like, let's look at this. This is Snopes being distributed on Yahoo News. Investigating rumor, Trump will declare martial law on April 20th after invoking Insurrection Act of 1807. You know, I can't do any commentary or criticism if my assessment on Donald Trump revolves around, well, he's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, there's no analysis else to be made. He's crazy. Anything and everything is on the table. Nothing is off the table. He's crazy. Online users shared a rumor claiming U.S. President Donald Trump would invoke Insurrection Act of 1807 on April 20th, 2025, followed by him declaring martial law. The Insurrection Act grants U.S. President the power to deploy the military into states for civilian law enforcement. To share the rumor, users copied and pasted the text from the first archived in a series of articles written by Medium.com blogger only identified by the handle Aletheisthenes. The rumor partly pertained to a Trump executive order issued on January 20th, declaring a national emergency at the southern U.S. border. Part of that order requested Trump to receive a joint report from the Secretaries of Defense and Homeland Security within 90 days, or by April 20th, advising whether to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. The order did not explicitly mention the words martial law. While Aletheisthenes, the author of the series of articles featured at length on a wealth of data about Trump's past actions, as well as the information about the Insurrection Act, this rumor existed more as a prediction than a provable claim. The DoD, Department of Homeland Security, and the White House did not yet respond to email requests for comment. A rumor that circulated online, where it is said that one reader emailed Snopes, I'm seeing many posts on Facebook that on April 20th, Trump will declare martial law. Another person referenced an executive order issued on January 20th, the first day of the Trump second term. Yeah, this is it. I really wish there was a way to get this to the hands of every American before April 20th. From the Medium, Snopes is a fact checker. They aren't saying it's real. I know Snopes is a fact checker. Let's see what their fact check comes out to. Okay, they didn't even fact check this. Uh-oh. Even Snopes found a fact it can't check. Like, I think his invoking of martial law, or not martial law, but the Insurrection Act of 1807 is potentially to claim that fentanyl is a matter of national emergency, and therefore, logistically, in order to implement deportations, they have to utilize the military. There's not enough agents in ICE. I suspect that the reason why they're doing this is so that they can use the military for they're invading Mexico, but operate on U.S. soil to deport people, which is still insane. I just don't think that they're following false flag operations of otherwise peaceful protests, arrest of journalists and politicians, military takeovers of major U.S. cities, press censorship, closed borders, and postponed elections. The author ended the article. If we don't act before April 20th, then by April 23rd, it will already be too late. If this happens, libs will be eating you. I mean, I'll be in prison, so I don't give a fuck if liberals will say, I told you so, because I'll be in fucking prison at that point, you know? Oh man, I can't believe liberals will be annoying to me in prison after the American military comes to my house and arrests me for being a fucking political dissident. Anyway, I'm hearing from my source that there's WMDs in Tijuana. Yeah. Can I say hi to you if we're in the same camp? No. Yes, Medium is just a blog. Anyway, yeah, he's authorizing the military to occupy and take jurisdiction over public land along the southern border. That's crazy stuff. All right, let's get back to this. Supreme Court says Trump administration must facilitate return of man mistakenly deported.
No gang ties.
Kilmer, if you can hear me, I'm still fighting for you.
And an admission from the Department of Justice that Abrego Garcia was deported by mistake.
The error that you are referring to was a clerical error. It was an administrative error.
The U.S. Supreme Court has intervened, upholding a lower court order that he be sent back to the U.S. Thursday night, the original judge handling the case, Judge Paula Zinnes of Maryland, ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia to the U.S. as soon as possible. The order gives the Department of Justice until 9:30 a.m. Friday to detail Abrego Garcia's location and the steps the U.S. has taken to bring him back. The development comes amid scathing criticism of the Trump administration for deporting 200-plus foreign nationals without any due process.
The Trump administration looks like more and more of a police state every day, and that's a country that none of us recognize.
Also developing overnight, the administration has moved to essentially cancel Social Security numbers for thousands of immigrants here on temporary legal status. The White House said it's a motivation to get them to self-deport, but that is a form of financial death, Adriana. Makes it almost impossible to do business with financial institutions.
All right, Scott, thank you.
For decades, President Trump is finally doing it.
Caroline, real quick, the president of El Salvador is coming to the White House on Monday. Does President Trump want him to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia with him?
The Supreme Court made their ruling last night very clear that it's the administration's responsibility to facilitate the return, not to effectuate the return. I believe the...
Yep. Classic. Oh, they're doing it. Talked about this yesterday. There you have it. Oh, well, they're just saying facilitate. So, no, we're not bringing him back right now. That is so psychotic. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Yeah, we're facilitating. We're in the process of facilitation. You can't tell us what the timeline looks like. A lower court might, but then we'll kick the can back up to a higher court before we do that.
Department of Justice just filed another brief in the lower court. I would defer you to that for any updates. But as you mentioned, President Bukele will be here at the White House on Monday to talk about the cooperation that is at an all-time high. And we very much appreciate President Bukele and El Salvador's cooperation in the repatriation of El Salvadorian gang members who the previous administration...
We have an update on the case of the Maryland man wrongly deported to El Salvador. The administration admits it was a mistake to send this man, who is a lawful resident of the United States, married to a U.S. citizen, to El Salvador. Now a judge has decided the Trump administration is required, must provide, quote, daily updates on its efforts to return Kilmer Abrego Garcia to the United States after he was sent to El Salvador because of what the administration calls, quote, an administrative error and what a court called Kafkaesque mistake. An attorney for Abrego Garcia appeared in court this afternoon. Here's what Abrego Garcia's lawyer said outside court while calling on the White House to abide by the Supreme Court's order to return his client.
The government attorney did say that they intend to comply with the order and bring him back. That's the bare minimum. They should have done that already. They've had plenty of time between the Supreme Court's order early yesterday evening and now, he should be here in the United States. It's a 5-hour flight.
But he's not. Let's bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, in Greenbelt, Maryland. So, Pierre, you were there. Tell us what happened in court and what the judge's reaction to the government's position was.
Completely unhinged shit happening at every facet of government right now, but especially when it comes to this stuff.
I think the most notable thing about the hearing today was how frustrated the judge actually was. She had some basic questions for the government's attorney. Number one was, where is Mr. Abrego Garcia and what is his condition? And she was clearly flustered when the attorney for the government could not answer that question, Terry. He could not answer the question. She asked him another question about exactly what steps were being taken all these days after her initial order to bring Abrego Garcia back to the United States. The government's attorney did not have an answer for that. That is why the judge ended up in the position of taking the stand that every day until they get Mr. Abrego Garcia back to this country, she wants an update to answer the questions that she put before the government. She clearly has a sense that the government is not complying intentionally, and she's pushing them to give her the answers that she wants, Terry.
Yeah, to pretty basic questions. Where is he? What's his condition? Under whose authority is? Because, Pierre, obviously the Supreme Court said that order is good law. The Supreme Court, all 9 justices, upheld her order saying that this man must be returned to the United States, but the court can't tell the government how to do it. Do you get the sense that the Department of Justice is not openly defying this order, but is at least going to slow walk it and maybe not even do that much to accomplish it and obey it?
Well, the question of whether they're slow walking it is an open one. The government's attorney today, Drew Ensign, simply was saying that the government was trying to evaluate the Supreme Court's ruling. It took issue with part of the judge's interpretation of the Supreme Court ruling. The government attorney did say that they intended to comply with the Supreme Court order. But you raised a very critical question, Terry. How quickly will that take place? And again, I can't emphasize enough the level of frustration we saw from the judge when she asked that basic question. Where is Mr. Abrego Garcia and under what condition is he being held?
Yeah, a federal judge, a lot of power there, and she's having trouble exercising it over the Trump administration. Pierre Thomas, thanks very much.
Let's jump the map now to Maryland, where video to our monitors shows the moment ICE agents smashed a car window and took a 51-year-old mother into custody. CBS News Baltimore's Tara Lynch.
Chances that Garcia's already dead. Please, can you stop? I don't like... Why does everybody do this? Shut the fuck up, okay? Stop. Stop saying that he's already dead, okay? What an insane thing to say. Please. God damn, dude.
Spoke to the woman.
I keep hearing like lib resistance accounts basically fucking post that over and over again without any evidence whatsoever. It's ridiculous.
Woman's daughter.
No! You wouldn't think that you and your mom are going to work and suddenly they're taking your mom for no reason.
On March 31st in Westminster, Karen Cruz Barrios says she and her mother, Elsie Barrios, were driving to work when law enforcement pulled up behind them. ICE agents approached the car, asked for IDs, and told Barrios to step out. That's when she asked for a search warrant. Elsie Barrios is currently seeking affirmative asylum after her attorney says she entered the United States in 2017 undocumented. Cruz Barrios says the agents did not give a warrant to her mother, so she refused to get out. That's when they broke the window and unlocked the car.
No! Oh, I would understand.
It's wild. Like, this is just totally illegal. I mean, not that any of this shit matters, but this is completely illegal. This is not a thing that you can't do any of this shit. And they're wearing masks. Makes me feel like they know what they're doing is illegal, you know? Gestapo.
Understand if they had a search warrant or anything for her, then okay, then you guys can take her out or give it to her and she can step out.
I'm pretty sure it's not illegal. It abso-fucking-lutely is. What are you talking about? That's your private property, your car. Just like your fucking house is your... They can't just do a warrantless search and seizure like this. What are you talking about? Yeah, those guys are The only difference in this circumstance, the only problem here is that there are constitution-free zones, technically, anywhere within 100 miles of a port of entry, an airport, you know, a beach, waterways, is technically considered constitution-free zones, and therefore, although this is a warrantless search and seizure being enforced on a person who literally has a court date, ICE is allowed to operate without any sort of constitutional limitations. They did, though. Illegal immigrants don't have rights. Yes, they do, you fucking idiot. Of course they do. Everyone has rights. Undocumented and documented citizens and non-citizens alike have rights. The same rights that you do. The same rights that your shit stain of an existence has on U.S. soil, they also have. It's in the fucking Constitution. You don't even know what this person's status is either, and they didn't either at that point. They just fucking went in. They're like, oh, well, brown person. We can just fucking break your car window and nab you. Good thing we don't have any fucking due process anymore. Maybe they'll do that to you too, Grand Goober 444. It was a joke, buddy. Okay, dude. Fucking take a week off. Not that legality matters, clearly. It's not like legality has stopped any of these fucking assholes from behaving this way. Just straightforward Nazi shit, dude. Ay, ay, ay. I don't know. All right, let's get to, I want to watch the Douglas Murray thing.
We should get it out straight away.
I don't know. Do we have the full one? Because from what I understand, Joe Rogan had Douglas Murray, who is a horrible monster. Okay. Douglas Murray is a right-wing reactionary piece of shit. Massive Islamophobe. Okay. Giant piece of shit. Awful guy. And British on top of everything else. A repulsive little fucking cretin. And of course, as expected from a repulsive little cretin like this, a major supporter of Israel's genocide. Douglas Murray has gotten a lot of newfound prominence in the aftermath of October 7, as he's become a wonderful little soldier for Zionist propaganda in the Western world. And in that process, he's become quite the champion against anti-Semitism, even though, if I recall correctly, he's also said a bunch of anti-Semitic things in the past as well, to boot, ironically enough. Now, Joe Rogan brought forth Douglas Murray on the broadcast. Okay, so you hate British people? Okay, so you hate white people racist much? Yes, dude. Yes. Mayor of Beeftown. Wait, what? Karl Marx is a Jew? Oh my God. Mayor of Beeftown. What are you? Are you okay? I swear to God. There's just like severe mental illness amongst white supremacists. They get so baby shit whenever they even imagine a slight. I know Karl Marx is Jewish, you fucking idiot. Why wouldn't I know that? Why would that? What? Do you think I have a problem with that? What are you, fucking stupid? Fucking Nazi. Anyway, stop giving freaks like this subscriptions, chatter. It's not funny. All right. So, fucking sensitive ass white people, biggest babies on the fucking planet. All right. So, as I was saying,
damn, this guy's good.